Of you maybe who travel along Main Street in that area, this is just down from Angel's Envy, right across from where Riverlink used to have their customer service area, not too far away from Los Aztecas Mexican restaurant. That's where we have Sean Bowdy situated at the moment. So for those of you trying to get around this, trying to figure out how do maybe I work downtown, or trying to get from downtown out of downtown, trying to get around this situation. So a better look for you. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more so you have a better view of the area of where this is. So the incident happened right here. I'm going to circle the building where that occurred, so you can get a better view. So that's right on East Main Street and on Preston Street. So if you're trying to get around this, keep in mind that parts of East Market are blocked off, so you're not going to be able to get past that. You're going to have to go around. I've been seeing Floyd has been an option for some people trying to travel in that area. So just a heads up, Floyd may be one of your better bets to get around this, and maybe you can go up over to East Witherspoon if you're trying to get through that area. So if you're trying to, let's say, travel up Floyd and get past this area, up Floyd towards East Witherspoon could be an option, and then you can use East Witherspoon maybe to get over towards 64 if you have to do that. Also, Hancock Street heading down that way may be a way to get around it. Same thing for Jefferson, but keep in mind there's plenty of LMPD, ATF, FBI on the scene, so make sure if you do have to maybe get around this, just make sure you're following their directions as closely as you can to make sure you're not interfering with this. So once again, if you're trying to get around this scene, Floyd seems to be a potential option if you're trying to do that. East Witherspoon also a potential option. Hancock is an option, and East Market if you're trying to get a little bit further away from it. Clay Street is also one way that you could potentially go as well, so keep an eye on that. Same thing with East Jefferson Street. That's another way you can get around this. Brook is another way you can maybe hop on Jefferson, go over to Brook, and go over to East Witherspoon. So those are all options for you this morning as we continue to keep an eye on this scene. Really starting to see traffic backed up in this area. I've been looking at everything from Waze to all of our different partners in terms of traffic, and I've certainly been seeing a lot of reports of people trying to get around this as smoothly as possible, and apparently LMPD is doing a really good job of directing the traffic so everyone is able to get around this. But if you're inside this block between Witherspoon, Floyd, and Preston, and also for anyone maybe trying to travel on towards Market Street, if you're inside that block, any travel most likely not happening for you this morning unless LMPD lets you out, but you're certainly not going to be able to get in as a lot of these roads are blocked off this morning due to what's going on here. So going to continue to keep an eye on this scene and, of course, work to see if there are any more ways to get around this or any more updates, of course, Shannon.
All right, Tawana, thank you. Obviously, the best bet right now, as you've been advised to stay away from this scene. Now, this is a live look at Louisville Slugger Field. Just a few minutes ago, they had a large mobile command unit at that location. It seems that that has now left, and I see a number of people leaving Louisville Slugger Field. Not sure if those were some people who were in the old National Bank building and were told to go over to Louisville Slugger Field and wait until they were able to clear this situation. But this is the live look right now. This is right off of Preston. You see Louisville Slugger Field, but that mobile command unit is now gone. We are hearing that we're just minutes away from an update from LMPD's Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey. Of course, we will be bringing you that live as soon as that happens, but we have been told by U of L Hospital that they're not sure at this point how many people, how many casualties they are, but that it seems that they're going to be bringing them to a different location. We have Mark Stevens on that scene, and we'll let you know as soon as we hear more, but we've seen a number of police officers also arriving to this scene. I'm sure many will be conducting interviews with people who were there, who may have seen the shooter, who may have been hiding out in an area trying to save their life. But this comes as, of course, we're just about 1 month away from the Kentucky Derby, when we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people in our city for what is usually such a celebratory time for us in this community. And now we're facing this as we continue to follow this breaking news right now. And if you're just joining us, it's a little bit after 10 o'clock right now on this Monday. A live look right here. That's Louisville Slugger Field, of course, but then to the right, that little sliver of that gray building you see right there, that is the old National Bank building. We're at 8:32 this morning. Report of an active shooter was made at 8:39, sorry, and then that call was changed to an active aggressor, but LMPD is now reporting, sadly, multiple casualties. We don't know how many people were injured, but some people have sent out notices on their social media saying, I was in the building, I was shot in the calf, I'm doing okay, thank God. So we're going to be hearing many more of those stories as the day and the weeks progress. As we look live, again, this is the building that we're talking about where the first initial reports came in, the old National Bank building, and on the first floor is still that bank, and then above it, you have many other offices, and several condominiums are also in this very large building. It's more than 76,000 square feet, which may be why so many police officers have also been responding to this location. Myra Ansari is joining me here right now on set to get me more information as we continue to talk to police, and we know the FBI and the ATF are also on the scene right now with more. But Myra, what have you learned?
Well, Shannon, we are still trying to dig into all of this. I'm just getting into work here shortly ago, so but just driving into downtown, you can see the heavy police presence coming from the Spaghetti Junction area. So we're still waiting for police, right, to give that press conference, and I've been trying to monitor tweets possibly coming out from them as well. So I know that this is a very scary situation, another issue that we're having here in our community of gun violence, again, at that old National Bank. So very frightening for a lot of folks that are just going into work on a Monday morning after spring break. Right. People coming in back to getting things back to normal.
Right, trying to at least, and then this happens. And of course, that area is very busy. A lot of people work downtown, and this is really a centrally located building where this happened this morning. And it was very early, just about 8:39, and sad news is multiple casualties. So again, we're waiting to hear from LMPD. They're going to be holding a press conference. Hopefully, it should be starting any minute now. We're monitoring that. As soon as they start, we'll be taking that live to get you the latest.
Yeah, I saw that. Again, they're asking people, as you've been mentioning all morning, to avoid that area. Very heavily congested right now, and we're waiting.
And they need the space to really investigate and to try to figure out what's going on.
A lot of folks are coming in to try to see what's going on. Not the best thing to do. We'll try to bring you as much information as we can. This is, again, a live look at the scene there. Police heavily blocked off the area. Shannon and I are trying to go through Twitter and social media while we are on air today so we can get you some more information. But we have not seen anything recently come from LMPD about it. I haven't seen anything.
Gotcha. Okay. So yes, as we wait for that press conference to hopefully learn much more information, you can see a live look right here. So many streets now closed off. Again, this all started at the old National Bank building. That's on Main Street, right there in the corner of Main and Preston. On the other side is the Louisville Ballet. So there'll be a lot of people who won't be going to work today as you look at this live look, and so you see that they came fully ready to respond. At this point, we are waiting to learn if the shooter or shooters is in custody. There's some information that we're getting that we can't yet report on air. We need to confirm that first, but hopefully we'll get an update from LMPD on that.
Yeah, we're getting some information that we are digging through our sources on a possible suspect, but we cannot release that information at this time. We're waiting for police to confirm some of those details for us. But again, multiple casualties as folks go into work this morning at their downtown Louisville business, and an active shooter goes in, and unfortunately, such a tragic ending here unfolding in our community. So we are waiting to learn more information. Again, this is happening at the old National Bank, and that is across the street from Slugger Field on East Main Street.
Right. Okay, so another live look right there at so many officers in this area. And of course, we have Thunder over Louisville, which is coming up very soon on April 22nd, which will be right here in this area where there will be hundreds of thousands of people gathered. And right now we're dealing on this Monday morning, right after Easter, with a mass shooting with a number of casualties in our area. Some people have put notes on social media. One person put down that I was in the building, an active shooter at the Old National Bank this morning. I'm okay at U of L Hospital. It was awful. I am okay. I escaped, shot in calf, a superficial wound. I am okay.
Oh, wow.
Thank God. So we're continuing to hear more stories like that from people, and we have Wave News crews all over gathering information. We'll be bringing you the very latest right here on Wave. And do we have an update right now? Checking with my producers, an update on when this press conference will be taking place with LMPD? We're told,
any moment.
We're told it will be any moment. Do we have a live shot we can go to right now to show that scene? So LMPD has set up an area for the press to gather at right now, and that is where they're telling people to go. Where is that? Sorry, trying to go through the emails as we are on air here to give you the very, very latest. But again, this is a live look. There was a mobile command unit that had been situated there right by Louisville Slugger Field that has now left the area. And you see so much crime scene tape up in downtown Louisville, a very busy area, very important street in our community. Of course, Main Street, certainly not anything you would ever want to have happen. And especially, there's another crime scene unit pulling up to the scene right now. So this is going to take a long time because you can imagine how large this area is. We don't know if the shooter was able to escape that building. Did they leave? Were they caught outside or inside? Were they caught? So we have many questions, and we hope to be getting those answers as soon as we can.
And we're also waiting to find out how many people have died as well. There's a media staging at Hancock and Maine where we're hoping to get some more information from Louisville Metro Police. But it sounds like they said multiple casualties, and what you're seeing, Shannon, from social media, even folks saying that they were shot in the leg, or you know, that they survived and they're at their hospital, thankfully. So we are waiting to learn more information on how many casualties we're talking about, how many people were shot and have survived so far. Also, the suspect, is the suspect at large arrested? Who is the suspect? Again, we're still waiting. There's so much unknown, and all we can see right now is what you all are seeing there at the screen. And we do have reporters out there who are digging for us and trying to find out more information as well.
Yeah, okay, so we just want to recap here as we're waiting for the police to give us an update, and we're told that that will be momentarily. So this first came in at 8:39.
LMPD just tweeted that there is no longer an active aggressor threat. The suspected shooter has been neutralized.
Okay.
They use that specific word, neutralized. So we will learn what that means exactly, but it sounds
right,
like
that there's no active
threat right now.
So perhaps that is why we saw some people leaving Louisville Slugger Field. We saw the command unit pull away. We see a number of officers, but they don't seem to be running or having that urgency to them at this point.
And this is the business that we're talking about.
This is the building.
This is the building. It's very noticeable if you drive through downtown Louisville because of its unique shape, but this is where the active shooting took place. Again, the presser is about to start, so let's listen in.
Okay, that right now is Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey who will be speaking here, and we'll give you a little background here as we're waiting for the microphones to be set up and so we can gather everything. But again, the active shooter call came in around 8:39 at 333 East Main Street. That's the old National Bank building right across Slugger Field on Preston there, and then it changed to an active aggressor. Okay, here we go. This is LMPD Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey.
At approximately 8:30 a.m. this morning, Louisville Metro Safe received a report of shots fired and a possible active shooter at 333 East Main Street at the Old National Bank. Shortly after, officers arrived on scene with Louisville Metro Fire and EMS, where they encountered active gunshots still being fired inside the location at that time. The shooter was confirmed to be dead on the scene. We do not know exactly the circumstances of his death at this time. 5 people have been confirmed to have been killed inside. At least 6 were transported to University of Louisville Hospital, including 1 officer with various injuries. We are unable to confirm the status of those who have been transported at this time. I will reiterate that this is an ongoing investigation. This information is preliminary, and it will be updated shortly. We ask that the public remain away from the scene. It will be an ongoing scene that will take a long time to investigate, but there is no active danger known to the public at this time. If anyone has any information related to this incident, we ask that you call 574 LMPD. We will have another update press conference at 11:30 where we'll be able to answer more questions and put out more information. As of now, that is all the information that we are able to provide. Thank you.
Sir, would you please...
Thank you. That's
All right, so
we have confirmed at least 5 deceased at this time. We have transported
Again,
at least 6
LMPD.
to University of Louisville Hospital.
Thank you all.
Again, LMPD confirming 5 people have died. 6 people were transported to University Hospital and are receiving treatment for their injuries. That includes 1 officer who was also shot in this incident. As far as the suspect, we know that he is deceased. We don't know how he died, the situation involving that. But police are telling us that that there is no longer a threat at the Old National Bank there on East Main Street across from Louisville Slugger. They're again asking folks to stay away from the scene, but no danger at this time. But they're going to give us more details, Shannon, at 11:30 is what they said.
yeah, well, we'll wait for that, but very sad today that 5 families are learning that their loved one was killed today. They probably thought it was just another Monday. But very sad news. So as we think about those 5 families and hope for the very best for those injured, including that police officer. He said that when they arrived on the scene, Louisville Metro Safe, Louisville Metro Fire, and EMS, they were all there, and they heard gunshots coming from inside the building. We know that 6 people have been taken here to University of Louisville Hospital, including that police officer. That is also why probably so many officers have been gathered there, because we see that in the past when an officer is hurt. So many of his brothers and sisters in blue, his or her brothers and sisters in blue, will show up there to offer support to the officer and the family members as well. So they're asking anyone, if you have any information, they really need it. 574 LMPD is the number to call as they continue to gather all of the interviews from witnesses and evidence from this scene. You can imagine how much work is ahead for them over the next few days as they work on that scene.
And as you mentioned, Shannon, just heartbreaking for folks to come off of the Easter weekend, coming out of spring break, folks going into work on a Monday morning, and then having to deal with this situation. Again, 5 people are dead, and 6 people were injured, taken to the hospital, including a LMPD officer, taken to University Hospital after this horrific shooting that happened at Old National Bank on East Main Street. We know that the suspect is, police have said that he is no longer a threat, and that we are waiting to hear more information about who he is, what his motive is. We are digging into some of that information as well.
So hopefully at 11:30, we know so many people have questions about this, but these are the details. It happened this morning at the Old National Bank building. First call came in about 5:30. And sad news that we're learning, we have been told multiple casualties. LMPD now confirming 5 people were shot and killed. 6 injured, at least, they're saying. And the shooter at this point, we know that the active situation is over. Huge sigh of relief for so many people who may have been just locked in their office, but the circumstances are unknown as to how the shooter was killed. LMPD is planning another update, as Myra and I have been mentioning, at 11:30 this morning, and we're going to stay on the air and we'll be bringing you that live.
LMPD didn't really take questions from the media in this presser, so we're hoping that we're able to ask some more questions come 11:30 from them to get a little bit more information about the shooter. Again, he is dead. We do not know how he died. There are still questions about that. We don't know what his relationship was to the folks who worked at that bank and to the bank in general. So we're working to find some more information about that. But in all of this, right now, no active threat to folks who are there, but still a very heavy police presence there in downtown Louisville. Again, 5 dead and 6 injured. And one of the 6 is a LMPD officer. Again, police are asking folks to call their anonymous tip line, 574 LMPD. You hear us say it all the time here on Wave News. If you have any information about this, you're asked to give them a call and send any information. Shannon, you found some tweets from folks who said that they were shot in the leg, shot in the thigh, right? And were
shot in the calf.
Shot in the calf.
And saying, I am
just grateful.
Alive.
Yes.
Thank God.
Yes.
Grateful to be alive after what is no doubt a terrifying situation, and we'll learn more details about what transpired. But you can imagine, too, even for police officers pulling up to that very large building, not knowing what is going on inside, and just hearing the sound, they said, of gunshots still being fired off from inside that building. So they must have reacted very quickly. The call came in at 8:30, and couple of hours later, they do tell us that the shooter is now dead. Again, we don't know much more about how that shooter was killed. Was it a self-inflicted wound, or did police fire and kill the shooter? We're going to get more information at about 11:30. But we have crews spread out all throughout the area who have been monitoring this, and they've been reporting on the number of sirens that they've been hearing, and the activity even from the air as they had police choppers up in this area. But this all comes as the city is very busy getting ready for one of the largest events, Thunder over Louisville, which is just a couple of weeks away, coming up on April 22nd.
Shannon, we're going to go to Mark Stevens. He is live at U of L Hospital. Mark.
Shannon and Myra, as you reported, 6 people, including an officer, were transported here to U of L Health downtown to the trauma center. I'm just going to get out of the shot for a minute. Obviously, there's treatment undergoing. We're waiting for the hospital to give us more specifics about what kind of injuries they've seen. As you guys have been reporting and I've been listening, we've had, we know that somebody was at least injured in the calf, so that would be someone who would be here at the hospital getting treatment. As you can see, one thing that has changed in the time since we last came on is that LMPD has brought their crime scene units here, because in addition to treatment at the hospital, police are also going to have to be gathering evidence as they continue to conduct their investigation of this shooting that occurred earlier today. Where the hospital didn't give us a list of injuries yet. We do know, as you've been reporting, 6 people, including the officer, taken to the ER here at University of Louisville Hospital downtown. We do know the hospital plans at some point to set up some kind of press conference to give us an update from what we would imagine to be ER doctors about the types of injuries that they have seen and have been treating, but we don't have specifics on that so far. Again, the situation is much calmer than it was hours ago. A spokesperson for the hospital said it was very busy this morning. When we arrived, there were 3 Metro ambulances here on scene. Most of those have left. Now the change is that the crime scene unit is here, and so we would imagine that detectives for LMPD are gathering information and evidence that they need for the investigation of this shooting that's ongoing. Live at the U of L Hospital, Mark Stevens, Wave News.
Here, or do I need to go back to? Again, Mark telling us what's going on there at U of L Hospital. We are going to go now to Sean Bowdy, who is live close to the scene. Sean, what can you tell us?
Preston now. Just a block in front of us is where that happened. We got a little closer once we learned that there was no more active aggressor. But you can see the police that are still here. But one thing that Mark said, too, that I want to point out is the kind of calamity or the calmness that has come about this scene. Obviously, when we now know that the aggressor involved in that is dead, and we're starting to finally see police officers leave this scene. So we had to quickly get over to the sidewalk to make sure that these police officers could get out of here. And you mentioned the press conference that they're expecting to have at 11:30, which is something that I'm interested to see as well, because I've seen a lot of ambulances leave out here. We got here around 8:45 this morning, and really from 8:45 for the next hour or two, we saw ambulance after ambulance pull up and leave. We saw fire trucks, police officers all doing the same. It never seemed to slow down. To see it slow down is a good sign, obviously, but ultimately at the end of the day, just a tragic situation to see what's happened right here in the heart of our city. So many police officers still on the scene, marked, unmarked cars, EMS still on the scene. And obviously we are expecting to hear from LMPD multiple times throughout the day to update us on what's happening. But it's still going to be difficult to come through here if you're trying to do that. It is a safer situation now, obviously, than it was a couple of hours ago. So that is the good news if you are in the area, living in the area. I talked to a couple of people that live in the building across the street from where it happened. They said they were at the coffee shop just a few blocks away. The building sent them a text alerting them to what had happened, and they were told to avoid the area, and many of them did avoid the area. There are a lot of people, though, that have showed up here to take pictures, which is something police do not want to see as well because of the danger of the situation. But obviously much calmer now, much safer now. Just a tragic story that you never want to cover here in the heart of Louisville. In Louisville, Sean Bowdy, Wave News.
All right, thank you so much, Sean. Just heartbreaking to learn these details. Again, 5 dead and 6 injured, including an LMPD officer after a shooting at the Old National Bank this morning. This happened around 8:30 as folks are going into work. We know that the shooter is dead. We do not know how the shooter has died. We're still waiting to learn some more information about that. LMPD gave us a few details a few minutes ago. They're supposed to give us another update in about an hour, but we weren't allowed to ask questions. So
it was very brief.
So those are the details that we have so far.
Right, 5 killed. So just imagine right now, 5 families are being told that their loved one was killed in the country's latest mass shooting that took place right here in downtown Louisville early this morning, about 8:30 at the Old National Bank building. So many questions still that we're waiting to get answered. It appears at this point that it was just one person involved in this shooting situation that left 5 people dead and 6, including an LMPD officer, with injuries. We don't know how severe those injuries are. We're working to learn that information, but they did put the call out. They'd love to get more information. So if you can provide anything, it's 574 LMPD is the number to call as you take a live look right here at that scene. This is going to be a day that so many people will remember. Monday, April 10th, the day right after Easter Sunday, when so many people gathered with their loved ones to celebrate the holiday. And now we're facing this. All right, we told you just a short time ago, LMPD held a press conference. Let's listen to what Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey said.
The shooter was confirmed to be dead on the scene. We do not know exactly the circumstances of his death at this time. 5 people have been confirmed to have been killed inside. At least 6 were transported to University of Louisville Hospital, including 1 officer with various injuries. We are unable to confirm the status of those who have been transported at this time.
And Shannon, we were mentioning a tweet from someone who was taken to the hospital. They were shot in the leg, and they were just grateful to be alive, thanking God. Just a horrific Monday morning here in downtown Louisville. People going into work at the Old National Bank when a shooter came in and shot and killed 5 people, injured 6, including an LMPD officer. Those 6 that were injured are at University Hospital at this time, getting treatment for their injuries. You can still see a very active scene there. Police tape blocking off. Folks are advised to not go into that area, and it's a very busy area. You know, lots of businesses, lots of restaurants, and just kind of a busy intersection where folks drive through to get to other places of work. So folks are being advised to stay away from that area. If you have any information about what happened, again, you are asked to call LMPD's anonymous tip line at 574-LMPD. We are also waiting to hear more about the shooter, about his name, who that shooter was. We're going to go live now to Olivia Russell, who's close to the scene. Olivia.
Hey, Myra, yeah, we just heard from LMPD. I know we took that live, and we keep mentioning exactly what they just said because it was a really brief update from them, and they told us no questions would be asked, but they gave us the main information. And what we know, the sad part here, is that 5 people died, 6 people taken to the hospital. They wouldn't tell us their conditions. Again, they wouldn't let us ask any questions, and so we still have a lot more to learn here, and they said they're going to come back to us in about an hour to hopefully give us some more, but we do know that these calls came in around 8:30, and by the time first responders got here, there were active shots being fired, and they've said that shooter is now dead, but they wouldn't say exactly how that person died, any matter of that, but they said there is no active danger to anyone in the area. There are still a lot of people walking around here and just curious, poking their heads around the corners, maybe trying to go past the tape, and while there's no active threat to anyone right now, they want to keep this area clear because I still see some LMPD cruisers coming through here. They're not going away from it. If anything, they're still going closer to the scene. So they just want to keep this area clear for first responders only. So they're still asking people to stay away from the area. And they're saying they're not sure exactly how long it's going to take for them to investigate this. They expect to be here for quite a while. So I'm sure that warning to stay away from the area will be in effect for at least several more hours. But again, what we do know, 5 people have died, 6 people taken to the hospital, including 1 officer, and they wouldn't tell us exactly their injuries or their conditions, any of that, but hopefully we're going to learn some more in about an hour when they come back over here and give us another update, and maybe they'll even let us ask questions this time, because I know we have a lot of questions. Even bystanders around here who are walking up have a lot more questions, so we're going to keep you updated as we learn more. We're not going to leave this area, and we'll keep you updated. You're reporting live downtown, Olivia Russell, Wave News.
All right, Olivia, thank you. So you can see how far away they have the media, because a couple of blocks down the street was where the actual building, the old National Bank building, is located, right there on Main. Myra was talking about how recognizable it is because it is such a unique shape to that building, and of course it's right next to Louisville Slugger Field, so a very popular area for many people to be aware of. Main Street, of course, and downtown Louisville, which is where this whole thing happened. We don't know if the shooter was killed or took his own life, and we don't know if that happened inside of the building or outside. Perhaps that is why they have so much crime scene tape up, gathering information, and you can imagine, with this being in such a very busy area, that there are going to be a lot of cameras catching video of how that person entered the building, what they were carrying, what they looked like, what were they wearing, did they have a mask covering the face, so many things that we'll be learning. But to think that this happened at 8:30 this morning in Louisville on a Monday morning, and now 5 families are learning that their loved one has been killed. We're gonna stay on the air and continue to update you, because we know so many of you want to know what's happening here and have questions, and we're gathering information. And again, we're waiting for that press conference that will take place at 11:30. We just got the basics just a short time ago when they held a press conference saying that the 5 people were killed, 6 injured, including an LMPD officer, and that the shooter was killed.
Yes, and Shannon, as you mentioned, just a normal Monday morning probably for so many people going into work. And our thoughts, our prayers, our condolences are with these families that are dealing with this tragic loss here in our community. Just heartbreaking after just a typical Monday morning. I'm sure people were just rushing to get back to work after the holiday weekend, after spring break, and, you know, just going into work thinking it's just going to be another Monday. And having to see this horrific scene is just, there are no words. It's just beyond heartbreaking.
It really is.
See that our community is now the latest victim of gun violence in this way. Mark Stevens is live at U of L Hospital to give us an update. Mark?
Myra, we're still waiting to learn the severity of the injuries of the at least six people that LMPD says have been transported here to the hospital, including the officer. The hospital says that they are going to schedule something to give us that kind of update from surgeons or other ER staff. What we can tell you is obviously this is the trauma center for Louisville here at the downtown hospital, U of L Health. I'm going to step out of the shot here. What had been a very busy scene when we first arrived around 9 this morning, we saw at least 3 Metro ambulances. Those ambulances have since left. What has replaced them now is LMPD crime scene units. Obviously, you know, the first thing when people are taken to the hospital is that doctors are trying to treat their injuries. But then after they've done that, police have to conduct their investigation. So the crime scene units would be here to gather evidence of what happened this morning at the Old National Bank building. We did see lots of officers earlier. That has changed. A lot of the officers no longer are here, or at least have moved inside. You would expect multiple officers to be here as part of the investigation, as well as to support one of their own who has been injured. Again, we don't know the extent of the injuries to the officer, or as well as to the other patients who were involved in that shooting. We do know, because we had information come into the newsroom, that someone had been shot in the calf and that they were getting treatment. So that's an injury that would be treated by doctors here at U of L. Again, we're waiting for the hospital to set up more information to provide us the exact numbers and the types of injuries that they've been treating. So I'm going to toss it back to you. For now, reporting live outside U of L Hospital, Mark Stevens, Wave News.
All right, Mark, thank you so much. You see a number of officers there gathered at U of L Hospital. And, of course, we're waiting to learn the condition of all of those who were brought there, including that LMPD officer. But this is going to be a lot of work for police over the next few weeks as they continue to gather all of the evidence. LMPD just did also send out a tweet that said the lone shooter is dead. So that means that there is not an additional shooter who was out there, another person who they suspected to be involved with this. And again, they're saying that the threat to the area is over, but they do not want people coming down to this area as they continue to collect evidence and talk to witnesses there and continue to do their police work. And you think about how busy they must be this time of year as they're preparing for so many of the huge events that we have in our town around Derby season. And now this is going to really be taking a lot of manpower.
And Shannon, as we've been mentioning this morning, we don't know how that shooter died. We don't know if if that shooter was killed. We don't know if the shooter took their own life. We're still waiting to learn that information, including the shooter's name and possible motive that could have been for this incident here this morning. This is a live look at LMPD's Twitter page. Right now, they've been tweeting just about what we know so far. Again, 5 people have been killed. 6 people have been injured, including an LMPD officer. They kind of laid out just the details that we do know so far. This happened around 8:30 this morning in the 300 block of East Main Street at the Old National Bank. The officers were on scene in minutes. The lone shooter is deceased. Again, total number of people who have died is 5. At least 6 more were transported to U of L Hospital. And if there is a shooting situation in Louisville, U of L is the place where people are taken because of their trauma unit there, and they're able to respond to these sort of situations. They're asking the public to avoid the area because it's still an active scene as far as the investigation, but there is no threat to the public. So that is what we know so far. We're supposed to get another update from LMPD at 11:30 this morning where we can hopefully learn some more information. Mark Stevens told us when he was live outside of U of L Hospital that we're hoping to hear also from some hospital staff, trauma surgeons, about the injuries for the people that came in with. We don't know how severely the officer was hurt in this shooting as well. But, you know, anytime that we have, it's hard enough for law enforcement to respond to a scene like this, but you add on top of it a fellow officer who has been shot, it makes it even more troubling and heartbreaking for the police officers who are there at the scene. So,
and just imagine that situation for the police officers as they arrived there to that very large building, not sure what was going on, just knowing that there were reports of an active shooter, and then when they arrived to still be hearing gunshots going off inside, and so how they responded to that. We're going to be getting much more information, but some terrifying moments and very scary too for all of those people who were inside the building. Obviously, hearing reports from one person who said that they had hid in a bathroom as they were hearing the gunshots. Just terrifying situation this morning at the Old National Bank building right there on Main Street, a very busy part of our city. It is now 10:45 on this Monday morning, and this all started just about a little more than 2 hours and 15 minutes ago with the reports of the shots being fired in that building. LMPD responded. They had first said multiple casualties, and now we know 5 people were killed, but 6 also injured, taken to U of L Hospital. We're going to hopefully learn soon about the severity of their injuries, but a very scary way to start off this week. As we take another look right now of that area, you see so many streets are closed off and a huge police presence right there on the scene that will likely stay this way for many hours ahead.
There's a lawmaker that tweeted, Representative Kentura Herron, part of her tweet said that this is happening around the country in a city daily. Today was our turn in Louisville, Kentucky. We hold our community tighter. There must be outrage and anger. So just heartbreak. You're seeing it across so many people. I've seen tweets who used to live in Louisville that are just saying how heartbroken they are to see that our community is now dealing with this type of gun violence and heartbreak. Again, 5 people are dead. 6 people were injured in this shooting, including an LMPD officer at the Old National Bank. You can still see a heavy police presence there. Folks really stay away from the area if you being advised to stay away.
Yeah. And Brian, can you give us an update as we're talking about this area to kind of show people if they need to, if they're thinking about heading downtown, which you're highly advised against by police and the mayor, but maybe you have an important appointment. Kind of give us take a look at what the streets around the area.
Well, a couple things. First off, it's worth pointing out for a lot of you that are traveling into downtown or have plans to travel into downtown, you're going to see a lot, not only with police helicopters still in the air and perhaps even media still, but there is a crash on 65 that's really backing up the traffic in general on 65. Everyone trying to get northbound. This is not because of the incident downtown. It's a separate issue, but it's causing a big issue in general for traffic to get into the city. So really, you have many reasons to avoid the downtown travel. That's another one to add it to the list. You see the closure that's happened there on Main Street between Hancock and Floyd. And again, it's as you pass through downtown normally on this section of 65, you always see Slugger Field on your left. You always see that building. That's the building we've been referring to this morning. It's right there next to the Slugger Field on the left-hand side. That's, of course, a one-way street zone, but you get the idea of how active that spot is. A lot of people usually on foot traffic, especially now as we're getting closer to the late morning lunch hour here. A lot of folks, I'm sure, having to to make those plans. And certainly if you're around Main Street, around downtown Louisville, that's going to be the case. Now, a lot of the traffic, once you get to the other side there of Shelby and get closer to Clay, that's when you run into a lot of the LMPD officers that are there directing folks to go the other direction and kind of get away from some of the side streets. So you see that purple, that is basically the area we're talking about right there at Slugger Field as you head toward the downtown area. And we've been watching different area cameras as well from this morning, showing some of the activity that we've seen in downtown Louisville and right around that area. This is the latest I get from the SkyTrack, and this shows right there at that portion there of Main as you get toward Slugger Field, and that, of course, is what has led to a lot of the traffic setups there. We've been seeing officers move around, though, and several of the feeds have been kind of moving things around, trying to allow some traffic to get through some of the other side streets in and around that area, and I suspect that's going to be the case as they get a better idea of the investigation scene they're trying to really narrow down on, which looks to be obviously right here into this area. I'll take a look at some of the other camera feeds. I'll monitor the traffic setup, too, for everyone that has to get into downtown. I know some have to get to doctor's appointments and hospitals and so forth, so we'll keep you updated how this evolves here over the next couple hours.
All right, thank you so much, Brian. Again, an active shooting situation that happened here in downtown Louisville at the Old National Bank. 5 people are confirmed dead. 6 people were injured. That includes an LMPD officer. We are waiting to hear from LMPD around 11:30. Hopefully, they'll take some questions this time, and where we can learn some information about what happened. We do know that the shooter is confirmed dead, no longer a threat. We don't know if the shooter took his own life or the shooter was killed, but when police were responding, they said that there was shots fired inside the bank when it happened this morning. So very terrifying situation here in our community, again, here at the Old National Bank.
Number of officers still there on the scene, but the threat is over. Now they're collecting evidence and talking to witnesses, and you can imagine if this happened on a Monday morning, 8:30, there are probably quite a few people for them to talk to gather additional information. But right now it is 10:50. We're waiting for LMPD to give us another update at 11:30, which is just a short time from now. But we do know that they moved that mobile command unit that was next to Louisville Slugger Field out, and we also saw at that point a number of people leaving Louisville Slugger Field. Not sure if they worked there and they were just waiting for the time to get the all clear so that they could leave their location. But certainly this is not something that you would expect to happen here in Louisville on a Monday morning, sadly. We are expecting Mayor Greenberg to give us an update at 11 o'clock. He did tweet out a short time ago, right after the shooting, to stay away from downtown Louisville, reports of mass casualties. And Governor Andy Beshear, we know that he is also now headed to Louisville and will be likely speaking with the media later today. As you see, some people just kind of milling about that area, even though authorities have please asked those to stay away. So we will stay here on top of this right here on Wave, and we'll be bringing you the mayor's conference, press conference at 11 o'clock, and then again LMPD expected to give an update at 11:30. So this is one of our SkyTrack cameras. That's Louisville Slugger Field, a place for many happy memories for many people. And then that building to the right, the gray one, that is the Old National Bank building. And then that street right in between, that is Preston. So that is one of the many streets now closed. And then if you head down to the right, that would be Main Street. And that is where this happened. Here's another view of the Old National Bank building, a very unique shape, one that many people recognize. And it's a very large building. You can see how many stories it is. I think it's about 8 stories, and it's nearly, it's about 76,000 square feet as well.
We're going to go live to Sean Bowdy now with some information. Sean?
Yeah, Myro, so you mentioned that the scene has kind of calmed down. You mentioned some more information that we've learned, but I just want to kind of give everybody a look at what it looks like right now. This is down Preston looking toward Main Street, which if you're looking at the light, the building just to the left on the other side of Main, that's the building that we're talking about in question, the one in the corner of Main and Preston where all this happened. And you could see police still there taking a look at everything, trying to investigate exactly what happened. One thing that I've noticed is the number of police officers that have left. Most of them, when they were leaving this scene, I don't know, an hour ago, they were leaving quickly. They had purpose. They had business to be done. Now, the officers that we're seeing leave this scene are leaving much slowly, which in a way is good news, but really it's just sad thinking about what had to happen for everything to end up this way. It's going to be a long time before this area here is clear. Just know that if you have to go through downtown today at all, you're not going to be able to do that, especially on this area of Maine. In Preston, we were about a block away, catty corner from here as well, earlier this morning, and really for blocks you can start seeing this. What you're looking at here is what it looks like here on Preston. It's what it looks like over there on Jackson, and it's what it looks like over there on Floyd, because this whole area has been blocked off because of what was an incredibly dangerous situation for everyone involved. Obviously, police saying now that there is no threat to the public, that the shooter had been, quote, neutralized. So that is good news in and of itself. But again, just a tragic thing to see happening here in downtown Louisville. We've seen a lot of people that have walked up to kind of where we're standing, people who have worked in the area, people who live over here who have come, got their phones out just to take pictures, see what's happening. Everyone just genuinely concerned for what's going on here. This is about as close as we could possibly get to the actual scene itself. So as we continue to kind of monitor back down this way and we can see maybe anything else that may happen, Myra, Shannon, I will make sure that if anything happens right here near the scene, that everyone will know exactly what's going on. For now, reporting live in downtown Louisville, Sean Bowdy, Wave News.
Sean, you said that when you arrived there earlier today, you heard all of the sirens and you saw the chopper up in the air. For people who work in that area, maybe someone is just here on vacation at a hotel, walking around enjoying themselves. Those must have been very scary moments.
Yeah, I actually talked to a few people that were from out of town. They had plans to go to a bourbon tasting over at Angel's Envy, just one block over. They asked, are we going to be able to get there? And the simple answer was, no, you're not going to be able to get anywhere during this time. It was scary for them to see what was happening. They were staying in a hotel just a couple blocks away. We're excited to walk down here and see Angel's Envy, see downtown Louisville. Obviously, they were met with this. They were all okay. They were obviously confused as to what was happening. We're concerned about what was happening as well, but to see someone visit our city and see it like this is just, I don't know. It doesn't represent Louisville, I know. Shannon.
Just absolutely heartbreaking. Sean, thank you so much for giving us a report here this morning. And we are just heartbroken for the families that are dealing with this devastating, heartbreaking loss. There are no words. You can't, I don't know, I can't. Just heartbroken for these families. 5 families dealing with this horrible news this morning that their loved one is dead after going into work on a Monday morning.
And you see that's the building that we're talking about where this happened on the right-hand side. You see how close it is from this viewpoint to Slugger Field. And then just to the right is the Louisville Ballet, too. So a lot of activity in this part of town. And then there's that empty parking lot right across from Slugger Field.
And the apartments there on the corner, too. So a lot of people who live right across the street, you know, dealing with this as well. We've been mentioning that the streets around that area are closed, so you are advised to not travel down to this area. If you have to head into work, I would call your employer. You're probably best to stay at home. And doctor's appointments, it's kind of a busy area there, but call ahead of time. But this is a live look where Mayor Craig Greenberg is expected to talk to us at 11 o'clock this morning, giving us an update about the shooting. Again, 5 dead and 6 injured, including an LMPD officer after that shooting at Old National Bank. He's pretty good on time, so he's at 11 o'clock, so that's when we kind of expect him to start.
Right. This is against the grain, located right there at Louisville Slugger Field. Of course, likely will impact their business day to day, as they likely won't be open for lunch. So the mayor has made ending violence in the city a key part of his campaign, and then he took office in January, and he's been holding a lot of meetings about this. A lot of the violence, though, hasn't been like this, a mass shooting. So we'll see what the mayor says, what he talks about. We don't know much yet about. We're gathering information about the suspected shooter, and as soon as we can confirm it, we will share it with you. But there are going to be a lot of questions: how this person was able to obtain the gun. Was the gun obtained legally? How many weapons were there? And was there a note left behind? What can we learn about this person and why they decided to do this, to kill 5 people on this Monday morning and injure 6 others? And we don't know how badly those people are injured yet. Another live look from around the scene. You see so many officers right here on the scene right now as they continue to collect evidence and talk to people. And we're going to be learning more here from the mayor in just a few minutes, and then from LMPD as well at 11:30. I've been corresponding with Whitney Austin, who is from Louisville. You remember her. She was the victim of a mass shooting in Cincinnati at the Fifth Third Bank in 2018. She was shot 12 times, and she survived by playing dead in the doorway there. And she's been very active now, created a foundation to try to end gun violence and mass shootings, and we're hoping to talk to her a little later today. But she texted and said, I just can't believe this, another mass shooting in Louisville.
And then for her to think about that, I'm sure we're going to go to Brian now in traffic. Brian?
Yeah, just a quick update for those who wonder about downtown. As we're monitoring all the feeds, we can see they're getting ready what we believe is going to be that press conference in about 30 minutes from now. So we're monitoring that as soon as we get word on that. A quick update, though, if you're traveling to downtown, overall, interstates have not been impacted by this. You can still travel to downtown. It's just 65 north is one of the issues right now because of a crash apparently that happened not far from St. Catherine. So that's causing more of a headache than anything for anyone traveling from the airport. But you can get into downtown. It's underneath the overpasses of 65. Once you get into the city, if you've been here a long time or been here your whole life, you know how this plays out when you get to downtown Louisville. You drive by and Slugger Field is right there on your left-hand side, and you see the Old National Bank there stands out right on the corner of Preston and Main. Large parking lot there to the side. That's where a lot of the staging seems to have taken place. We've noticed with all the officers in that particular spot. The Bats, by the way, are out of town this week, so there's no issues with games or anything like that for the afternoon. So it's a pretty empty lot right now on the Slugger Field side, which again is the reason why I think it's used for a lot of the staging. Our camera from the Skytrack shows the Waterfront Plaza. We're looking down from this angle, and this is what it looks like on the actual camera feed. And you can see again where they had the actual main unit. I believe it's some type of a crisis unit for LMPD they had out for a while. The bus that was out there for a while, that is of course left about 20 minutes ago, but it's not lower level, we believe, of that building there again was where the bank is, and that's where a lot of the activity has been most of the morning. Now I have not seen that Main is moving at all, so that likely is still closed between Hancock and into Floyd. That looks to be the spot, but if you're coming in from that direction from the east, you will likely see a lot of officers near Shelby and over to Clay. That's where you'll get guided to kind of go around this. And as a result, I have noticed that traffic is building a little bit more, certainly as you would expect there on Broadway. So there are ways around this. It's not a complete closure of downtown, but the mayor, of course, is advising everyone just to stay away as the investigation is going to take quite some time to get wrapped up. But obviously, guys, we'll be hearing more about this coming up here in a matter of minutes.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. And we are on standby waiting to hear from Mayor Craig Greenberg about the mass shooting this morning. He's expected to talk around 11 o'clock. This morning, so we're waiting for his press conference.
Yeah, I'm taking a look right now. Here we are. He's going to be speaking at Against the Grain. So it should be happening momentarily, and we'll stay on top of this. We'll be bringing you his press conference live, as well as that of LMPD's. We know that so many people very nervous and scared about what happened here this morning with a mass shooting, 5 people killed in downtown Louisville today. So that's why we're staying on the air to keep you updated, get you the very latest information, as this is going to impact so many of us. And, you know, you wonder, with so many huge events that we have coming up in our city over the next month, including Thunder over Louisville and, of course, Oaks and Derby. So many people gathered. The parade, how this is going to impact them. All right, let's go back to the Against the Grain. We see them getting ready for the press conference.
All right, thank you. Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey, Louisville Metro Police. Again, at 8:30 this morning, approximately 8:30 this morning, Louisville Metro Safe received a report of shots fired and a possible active shooter at 333 East Main Street at the Old National Bank. Within 3 minutes of being dispatched, officers arrived on scene and encountered the suspect almost immediately, still firing gunshots. Officers exchanged gunshots with that suspect, and ultimately that suspect did die at the scene. We're trying to confirm if that suspect died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound or was killed by officers at this time. At least 2 officers were shot during this exchange of gunfire. One is currently in surgery at University of Louisville Hospital. At least 4 more victims were confirmed to be deceased inside the location, as well as 8 that are now currently being treated at the University Hospital. 2 are critical, one of those being the officer. We're currently working to identify all of the victims, work with their families for reunification, and provide services to the families and the victims. The investigation, I want to reiterate, is ongoing. This will be a long scene. It will take pretty much into the night. So I still ask that the public avoid the area. I want to reiterate that there is no active threat. We believe this is a lone gunman involved in this that did have a connection to the bank. We're trying to establish what that connection was to the business, but it appears he was a previous employee. It is clear from the officer's response that they absolutely saved people's lives. This is a tragic event. But it was the heroic response of officers that made sure that no more people were more seriously injured than what happened. We will continue to provide updates as soon as possible. We will have another press briefing following this at 3 p.m. today. I will turn it over to Mayor Craig Greenberg at this time.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Humphrey. First, I ask that everyone around our city, around the country, around the world, pray with us for those who are currently at U of L Hospital, injured, fighting for their lives as a result of another act of gun violence. And I want to thank all of the first responders, the brave and heroic men and women of LMPD, who, thanks to their efforts, quickly responded to the emergency call. And as you just heard from Deputy Chief Humphrey, without a doubt, their actions saved lives. There will be a lot more information we are able to provide as the day goes on. But I want everyone in this city to know that notwithstanding tragedies like today, when multiple people are killed by gun violence, notwithstanding tragedies when individuals are killed by gun violence, our community will continue to come together. We will find ways to love and support one another and the families and friends who have been directly impacted by these acts of gun violence, and we will come together as a community to work to prevent these horrific acts of gun violence from continuing here and around the state. I want to thank again everyone at LMPD, from the Louisville Fire Department, from EMS, from the state agencies and now federal agencies that are also involved. We are a safer community. We are a stronger community thanks to the work of our law enforcement. And again, my prayers go out to the families who have lost loved ones today. My prayers go out to the officers who are at the hospital right now, and my thanks for all of them. Together, we will get through this together. Finally, I want to introduce Governor Beshear, who has joined us and who is assisting with the efforts. Governor?
I want to start by thanking the brave heroes in LMPD and our other responding organizations. LMPD made it to this scene in a matter of minutes after receiving the call, and there is no doubt in my mind that their efforts saved lives and they put their own on the line. And we have at least one officer in surgery right now that is there because he took those actions to try to protect the people of Louisville. I want to thank Louisville Fire, Louisville Metro EMS, and Emergency Management and the Louisville Sheriff's Office for the immediate response. They've now been joined by the FBI, ATF, Homeland Security, Kentucky State Police have requested in the Louisville Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods in this response. This is awful. I have a very close friend that didn't make it today. And I have another close friend who didn't either, and one who's at the hospital that I hope is going to make it through. So when we talk about praying, I hope people will. For those that we are hoping can make it through the surgeries that they're going through, and then we've got to do what we have done these last 3 years after everything. We've got to wrap our arms around these families. And to everybody who needs it, don't be afraid to get some help. Our bodies and our minds are not meant to go through these types of tragedies. And so I hope that all the brave officers that stepped into the line of fire, that are worried about one of their fellow officers, will reach out for help when they need it. I hope every one of those bank employees and folks in that building, one that I know well, and my AG campaign was out of that building. I know virtually everyone in it. That's my bank. I hope that they will all reach out and get the help that they need. There are a lot of people that are hurting today. And if we have a place to focus our energy, I hope it is to surround them with the love and the compassion that we have been so good at showing one another. I want people to know that while today is a horrific act, I do believe that this is a safe community with officers doing their very best each and every day, and that's what we saw here. Yes, I know that there are steps that the police department is taking to do things better after a recent report, but we certainly saw, I think, the very best from them today, and I want to thank them and all our other law enforcement officers for responding and doing their best to try to save some of my friends and many others. Thank you all.
Any questions? The other one, it appears to be non-critical injuries at this time. I'm not sure on the status of that yet. That'd be part of the investigation. Excuse me? It appears the shooter was, I don't know if it was an active employee or a former employee, but the shooter did have a connection to the location. No. Don't know that. He asked, was there any form of security at the bank? We don't know that either. That'll be part of the investigation. So one more. We have resources available to make sure the rest of the city is kept safe, and I do want to reiterate that. We are managing our resources with the state, local, and federal partners to make sure that all services to the city maintain while we are maintaining this scene at the same time. So thank you. The next update will be at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Let's go.
All right, that's the latest from LMPD, and a very emotional Governor Andy Beshear, who tweeted out this morning that he was on his way to Louisville to deal with this after hearing word of the mass shooting, and near tears when he said he had a close friend who didn't make it today and another one who is at the hospital. So this is the very latest that we know about that shooting that took place this morning at the Old National Bank. LMPD now saying 4 people dead. They are saying also 5, and that does include the shooter. They did exchange gunfire with that shooter, but they don't know if it was one of their bullets or the shooter's own bullet that ended his life. We know that the shooter is dead, and right now 8 people are being treated at the hospital. 2 of them are in critical condition, and that includes the LMPD officer. The other officer is non-critical at this point.
And Shannon, as we just heard, officers got on the scene within 3 minutes and confronted the shooter there. We were wanting to know what the connection was with the shooter to this bank, and LMPD says that there is a connection, a previous employee of the bank. So that is what we know so far. We still don't know the name of the shooter, or more so specifically what the motive was, why those people were specifically shot and killed, who were at work this morning. But Governor Beshear, as you mentioned, Shannon, emotional, talking about one of his friends passing away because of this shooting. He said that that person worked in his campaign when he was running for Attorney General, and that another person that he knew was in the hospital. Just heartbroken to see him emotional during this time. Mayor Greenberg also said that our community is going to come together to work to prevent horrific acts like this, and this is a time for us to come together and pray so we can go through and support one another during these type of tragedies.
We are getting the information from Senator Mitch McConnell. He just tweeted out saying, Elaine and I are devastated by the news coming out of Louisville this morning. Thank you to LMPD and our first responders for your bravery at the scene. We send our prayers to the victims, their families, and the city of Louisville as we await more information. And LMPD saying that as sad as it is that 4 people were killed and the shooter also dead, bringing that total number to 5, which is so devastating. But that LMPD said because they reacted so quickly, they have no doubt that other lives were saved today.
Absolutely. Old National Bank also tweeted out in response to the tragic shooting this morning at the Preston Point location in downtown Louisville. Members of the Old National Bank executive team, including the CEO, Jim Ryan, they're en route to Louisville. While there have been reports of multiple casualties by LMPD, we have been assured that the situation is no longer active. So this tweet was sent a little bit ago. Law enforcement authorities, they continue to assess the scene. So we're going to get another update at 3 o'clock today from, you saw in that press conference, there was police, Metro Safe, fire, governor, mayor, a number of people addressing the shooting that happened this morning at Old National Bank. So again, and we're also waiting to hear more information about the injuries that the people sustained who are currently at U of L Hospital. Mark had mentioned earlier that we're hoping that some trauma surgeons will give us an update on the injuries that people suffered from this morning's shooting there. So this happened at around 8:30 this morning. Still a very active scene there.
Yeah, Senator Rand Paul also releasing a statement saying, Kelly and I are praying for everyone involved in the deadly shooting in downtown Louisville this morning. Our hearts break for the families of those lost. So again, we're talking about 4 families, 8 people being treated at U of L Hospital right now, 2 critically, including an LMPD officer. Wave News reporter Mark Stevens is there live outside U of L Hospital to get us more. So initially, Mark, we were told it was not quite 8 people who were taken there, so they've adjusted those numbers a bit.
Yeah, initially, Shannon, we were told at least 6 people have been transferred to U of L Hospital to undergo treatment. LMPD updated that number saying that 8 people have been taken to the hospital. 2 officers were shot. Originally, we were just told there was 1. Now, 1 of the officers is in critical condition. A second person, LMPD says, is also in critical condition. Here, 2 of the 8 that are being treated at U of L Hospital. Now, the hospital has not told us yet the extent and the severity of those injuries. They've continued to tell us that they are going to give us an update at some point later today. We would assume with some type of ER staff to give us the idea of the specific types of injuries and what they've been treating. But again, 8 people taken to U of L Hospital. 2 of those are in critical condition. 1 is an LMPD officer, and there was a total of 2 officers who were shot in the mass shooting down at Old National Bank. Now, we did see in the last half an hour crime scene units who have been here gathering evidence, and they would be taking pictures. They would also be interviewing people as they are coming out of surgery and being treated so they could tell the story of what they saw, what they witnessed, what happened at the Old National Bank. We saw a number of forensic units bringing out brown paper bags, we would imagine full of evidence. So obviously the hospital treating injuries and trying to save lives, but then the police here as well conducting the investigation to get more details into what actually happened at the shooting at Old National Bank. Again, we are still waiting to hear from the hospital as far as exact types of injuries, the types of treatment that they've been providing. But again, 8 people taken here to U of L Hospital. 2 are in critical condition. That includes 1 LMPD officer, 2 officers shot as a result of this shooting. Live at the downtown hospital, Mark Stevens, Wave News.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate your giving us an update this morning. Shannon, it's just heartbreaking to see this type of devastation hitting our community. You know, we see it and report it all the time
in other places.
Yeah. And when your community is impacted like this, it's just heartbreaking.
Yes, it really is. And when we first were hearing these reports, hearing some scanner traffic about this, we thought maybe, oh, it's just a drill or this isn't really happening.
Because they do drills like this a lot.
Because oftentimes they do drills. But then sadly it turned out to be a real situation as we saw so many police vehicles just converge on that downtown area to the 333 East Main, the Old National Bank. All right, let's get to Brian Good right now as you look at this live picture that they are just getting more evidence from that area right now, Brian. And they said to expect the roads to be busy and closed off until late tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I'm getting probably the most questions about already is exactly where will this time period be here for some of these street closures. One thing I'm noticing, though, a lot of the traffic has really exited out of the city and the numbers have been reduced quite a bit. So let me show you where we are at on this. The little icon there is a crash on 65 near St. Catherine. That's a separate issue, but it is causing some traffic delays for those heading northbound, just FYI. You can see the closure there right at Slugger Field all the way from anywhere between Hancock and into Floyd. Right there on I-65 underneath it, that is where the scene was. Of course, there's the actual Old National Bank there in the lower level of that building at 330. On Main Street there as you get to the corner of Preston. That parking lot, a lot of folks park there all the time for Slugger field games for the Bats. That, of course, is relatively empty, but it's been mainly a staging area for a lot of the officers. But employees, I believe, park in that area, too, from the bank. So that area has also been closed off and being investigated right now by authorities in that area. Again, Main Street, though, is the Main Street. That is going to be blocked off all the way from around the Old National Bank area all the way to the other side of I-65. A lot of the traffic has been diverted as a result of that. And here's that live feed from our SkyTrack camera showing, again, where everything's just cut off there at Main Street. Everything's quiet. A lot of the officers are mainly the ones you see actively on the roads at the moment there on the side of Slugger Field, where a lot of you know that entrance there on the side portion of it from the main gate on Main. Here's a live look at Spaghetti Junction, 65, 71, and 64. I mean, traffic is moving, so you can still get into downtown and travel through the city. The interstates are not affected, but it is certainly the traffic is really eased up dramatically in the area. So I think a lot of folks are getting the word out to avoid downtown, and that's the main concern that the mayor had. And that's something we're trying to relay the message to help out authorities there is just relay that if you can, please just delay any trip into downtown Louisville for the rest of the day as they continue to do their investigation. And we don't know how this will play out for additional closures or how long those closures will last. That's something that as soon as I get word on that, guys, I will pass that on. But for the moment, the main closure right now you're going to see is right there in front of Slugger Field on Main Street.
All right, thank you so much, Brian. We want to let you know LMPD just tweeted out that there is no active aggressor at JCTC at 8th and Chestnut Streets. We are confirming that there was a shooting outside and the suspects fled prior to police arrival. LMPD talked about it in their press conference that they do have so much manpower at the scene, but they still have enough resources to cover other incidents in the city. And one of the issues that they brought up that they asked was their security at the bank when the shooting happened. And that's going to be something that we hopefully learn. Deshaun, you are Wave security expert.
Yes.
You talk to businesses a lot about situations like this. When you heard about this, Deshaun, I know your heart just sunk.
Well, sometimes you understand, first of all, you know, for those involved in this tragic incident, our thoughts and prayers are with them. But it's more like it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And we talked about business being prepared for situations such as this that we're having right now today, and what type of preparation plans do they have in place, and what type of exit strategies and how do they practice those exit strategies for their employees, and what contingency plans do they have in place to make sure that they're safe just in case they come into an incident where there is an active shooter.
And you're a former LMPD officer.
Yes.
So talk to us about what that must have been like for the officers entering a situation like this. And I would think that this would be a very challenging place to go to because this building is so large and so many access points.
Well, nowadays the officers are trained better in dealing with situations like this. So when you have an active shooter situation that come across the radio, then these officers go into the active shooter mode, how to plan for it, how to prepare for it, and how to entry and when to make entry. So some of those things are fluent as you go in. They're going to be changing as you go into a situation because they're going into an unknown. They have no layout of this building. They don't know who is the aggressor, who is the victim. So it's an unknown. That's when their training comes into plan, to where they go in and execute how they are trained to deal with these situations.
And we don't know if the shooter, we know the shooter is dead, but we don't know if the shooter died from shooting himself or through exchange of gunfire with LMPD, and that's something that we're going to find out as the investigation continues. But LMPD had said that their response, they were there so quickly that they definitely saved lives today. Unfortunately, we lost some, but lives were saved.
Quick response is key, and nowadays with the smaller police force, they have a lot more ground to cover. So getting there as quickly as possible is key, and response time will save lives when they get there, because an active shooter in any location, that's the last thing they want to see is the police on the scene, because they know when the police are on the scene, they have to contend with that. So I'm thankful to LMPD for making a quick response to the situation, but we still have people who are hurt and injured and killed in this situation. So quick response is critical in making sure that we stop an active shooter.
And talk to us about what is going to be taking place right now over the next days and weeks. I'm sure they're going to this shooter's house, poring over the social media accounts, seeing what kind of signs there were, talking to their family members and their friends.
At this time, the active shooter team will be in place. What they will do, as you said, they will find out who this person is, how long this person has been employed or was employed at this situation, what was the exit, why did they leave the situation, have they had any problems with anyone, what's in the residence, what's there that they can use as far as helping them understand the reason is why. Because we want to know why this person did this and why this person was in this position to do this. So that's what they're doing. They'll start backtracking with the evidence they pick up from locations where what kind of weapon was used, where was the weapon purchased, was there anything on the social media page, any red flags, anything that anyone could have seen that maybe prevented this before it got started. But the investigators have a great task ahead of them, but they'll start from the scene and work backwards.
Sean, you were shot in the line of duty. Tell us a little bit about that. How long ago was that? What are these officers that are going through this right now? What are they going through?
Well, what they're going through right now is their worst nightmare, because when you sign up for this, being a police officer, you understand that there is a possibility that this may happen, but you put it in the back of your mind. So when these officers go to these situations where another officer is injured, hurt, or killed, they know at any point in time that could have been them. So they are grieving right now for this officer, but also they have to do their job.
Right.
So it's a tough situation because your heart is heavy, but you still have to go out there and do your job and protect and serve the people of the city.
When you think about, I'm sorry, Myra,
No,
but when you think about the old National Bank where this took place, you know, banks don't lock their doors. They're open for their customers. And so you think, looking ahead, you know, sadly, we've been reporting on so many mass shootings in places, you know, schools. They're usually locked unless someone has a weapon and they can get through the door. But, you know, how do we move forward from this when, you know, we just going to lock everything and have metal detectors everywhere?
That's a tough situation because places that you have are open to the public, and they rely on the public to do business. And so you never know, and that's when it becomes about being prepared. And as I said before, we don't want to live our lives in fear, but we want to live our lives prepared. Because the dynamics are changing how we live our lives, and it's changing fluidly. People are more aggressive now. People are more angry now, and they're taking their anger and their aggression off on other people. So
we were talking about just, you know, if you look at statistically, no place is safe. We've had shootings at movie theaters, at malls, at schools,
Grocery
at business,
stores.
grocery stores, even here locally at the Kroger in J-Town a couple of years ago. How do we go about going into places, work, the park, school, wondering if we're going to make it out?
And that is the question of the day. Because you have to move forward with this. You cannot let this stifle your life. But you have to also understand that somewhere in the back of your mind, it has to be there. It has to make you a little more cautious. It has to make you a little more aware of your surroundings. So each time something like this happens, there's a lesson taken from it. So we have to take the lessons from everything that's going on around us and put those into play in our daily lives.
How often do you go into businesses, because this is what you do you find out there is no plan, or employees haven't been talked to about what to do? And how important is that to know? You came into our station and told us, you know, if this were to happen, this is what you should do, because it's so important, because it could happen anytime.
To answer your question, a lot. You go into a lot of businesses and they don't have an active shooter program or active shooter plan in place. As growing up, I remember in school we practiced tornado drills and we practiced them fire drills. This is going to have to be one of those drills also that's put in place with those other two. But a lot of businesses look at sometimes, and it's hard to say, a lot of them look at costs of having someone come in and train their employees. So we have to put that out the window sometimes and err on the side of safety versus cost.
Deshaun, you know, with this, the shooting that happened this morning and all the work that will be done, they talked about the mental health now of officers. And this comes at such a crucial time for our city as we're gearing up for so many events with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, people gathered. So, you know, what would you say an LMPD officer is facing right now?
And this is the part that no one talks about. No one talks about the mental health of the first responders. Mental health of the first responders is crucial because they see things that people don't see it on a normal day, and they have to deal with them. They have to brush them off and go back to work and protect and serve and patrol, and they have to do those things. I think this time is really crucial. I think our mental health for our first responders should be ramped up to where the accessibility is there and ready for them because this is a tough situation to deal with. I myself have been through this situation, and I know my mental health was destroyed coming out of it. Back then, there weren't the facilities to help us, but now there are facilities, but it has to be to a point to where it's required for these officers to go and have some type of mental health check, because it does. You see kids shot, you see bad car accidents. These are the things that you deal with daily, and you take them home with you. And you can only process so much anger and frustration and death, and one person can only process so much without having a release for that.
You've dealt with victims too, as we're talking about mental health, for these victims who witnessed this horrific incident this morning, who saw it happen, maybe were able to walk out, others who were taken in ambulances going to the hospital. What are they going through?
They're going through right now a little bit of shock right now because you know this is possible to happen, but you never think it's going to happen where you work at. And they're going through an unrealization of shock right now, and they'll slowly start to process it piece by piece. It could have been, what could I have done to do this, or what should I have done, or what I didn't do. Then you go through what's called a blame. You start blaming yourself for being a survivor. So there's a lot of things that they'll go through as an employees, but understanding that how to process that, and there are professionals that will help them process that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention, you know, what was just a short time ago, our crews in that area, they reported a number of police cars just speeding off so quickly. We were afraid that there was another active shooter situation at JCTC, but LMPD, thank goodness, just said that there was a shooting that took place, but that they took off prior to police getting on the scene. So just imagine they're already facing with one mass shooting and then concerned that there could be a second. I mean, that's a toll on an officer.
That's a lot, because once again, it's the unknown. You don't know if they're connected. You don't know if there's, because you're not knowing, but you're having one event, a secondary and a tertiary event coming right after the other. So your mind is already at a heightened level of alert. So that just keeps it going. So it's easier for us to look at it and see it, but from the officer's point of view, it's all connected.
Right.
It's how do I get there to help save people's lives.
Police had mentioned that if anyone knows anything, to call them, 574 LMPD. We were talking about red flags, and that's something that police are looking into, probably social media. But how important, Deshaun, what do you want to say to the person out there that maybe knows something and is not sure if they should say something?
Red flags are always there. They are there, and sometimes you have to say something because we always want to say that I wish I would have. But if you have the opportunity to help someone, because not only are you helping the people who they may hurt, you're helping that person also, because it could be you are the cause that helps them get some type of help. So if you know someone that's having mental health issues and you're thinking that they may hurt themselves or someone else, then it's your responsibility to stand up and say something.
Right. That is actually, we were talking about Whitney Austin, the survivor of the mass shooting at the Fifth Third Bank in Cincinnati, and that is a big part of her foundation, what she's doing right now. Will you stay here with us?
Yes.
We want to get an update right now from Wave News reporter Olivia Russell, who is there near the scene of the Old National Bank right now on Main. Olivia?
Well, Shannon, yeah, we just heard from Governor Andy Beshear, Mayor Craig Greenberg, and LMPD. And even just a few minutes before we went live here, we saw a woman sobbing, being comforted, hugged by other people, and people nearby just pressing their fingers into their eyes, trying to control the tears and all the crying. So this is a really emotional scene out here. So it's developed throughout the morning too. At first, LMPD was reporting multiple casualties that grew to 5 people dead, 6 taken to the hospital. Now we know 8 people taken to the hospital, 2 of those being officers, and we know that at least one of them is in critical condition, another person in critical condition taken to the hospital. So this is really a developing situation, and officers are keeping us updated as we learn more. But here's what Governor Andy Beshear had to say and how this hits home for him.
This is awful. I have a very close friend that didn't make it today. And I have another close friend who didn't either, and one who's at the hospital that I hope is going to make it through. So when we talk about praying, I hope people will. For those that we are hoping can make it through the surgeries that they're going through.
And you hear right there Governor Beshear saying that he had at least 2 close friends who were shot here, and then one person didn't make it. And I think that just really shows how much this is affecting a lot of people, and that really puts it into perspective. So right now I want to tell you, if you have a loved one or just know someone who works or lives downtown, reach out to them. Send them a text message. I know people have been texting me, and unfortunately I even know people who were involved and injured in this shooting, and that's where it just really hits home. Even if you don't know someone who is affected, you might know someone who was. I know this is really such a small city, so reach out to those loved ones. Let them know that you are there for them, because I know it's more than just those people who were in here. It's the entire community who this is really hurting, especially Governor Andy Beshear. And you notice standing next to him, Mayor Craig Greenberg. His office was shot up just over a year ago, too. So this gun violence just affecting a lot of people. Reach out to someone if you know them. Check on your friends. Let them know that you're there, you love them, you support them, and as they keep mentioning, send your prayers their way. And they also really wanted to thank LMPD too, those officers who responded to those calls. They were very brave, and they said they definitely saved some lives, even though unfortunately too many were lost here today. Shannon.
Thanks, Olivia.
We're going to go now to Mark Stevens. Mayor Craig Greenberg has just arrived to the hospital at U of L Hospital, so Mark is there right now. Mark?
Myra, Mayor Craig Greenberg, as you said just moments ago, we saw his vehicle pulled into where you enter the ER. Yeah, he has gone inside. We also saw Deputy Mayor David James on a different sidewalk heading towards the hospital. We would imagine that they're going not only to potentially speak with one of the 2 officers, but also just the people who are being treated. Again, you know, this morning it was police had said at least 6 people had been taken to the hospital. That had changed to now 8 people had been taken to the hospital for treatment, 2 in critical condition. One of them is one of the LMPD officers officers. A second LMPD officer was also shot during the mass shooting down at the Old National Bank. We heard from one patient who said that they had been shot in the calf and were doing okay. They were thankful that they were alive. That is about the extent that we know of the injuries. LMPD did tell us that two patients were in critical condition, including one of the officers. The hospital has been told us multiple times that they will be holding a press conference at some point, we would presume with emergency medical staff, to get an idea, a more precise idea of the types of injuries that people have been treated for, that they have sustained, and also what those injuries are consistent of, the types of treatment. We've also seen a number of police who had been here, not only to, we would imagine, support their officers who were involved, but also gathering evidence. We saw a number of officers walking out with brown evidence bags because not only is the hospital here treating patients to save their lives, but the police are here as well, having to conduct the investigation, gathering statements from the witnesses, the people that were shot, to be told what did they see, what happened before police got there. Again, the Mayor Craig Greenberg arrived just moments ago on scene, went into the emergency room. Deputy Mayor David James as well here at U of L Hospital. For now, I'll throw it back to you guys. Reporting live from U of L Hospital, Mark Stevens, Wave News.
All right.
All right, thank you, Mark.
All right, so we know that two LMPD officers were taken there with injuries, one undergoing surgery, one in critical condition, and the other one non-critically injured, and one other person also critically injured. So 8 people total, 4 killed in this mass shooting. Let's give you a recap if you're just now joining us. The first call came in around 8:30 about the shooting at 333 East Main, the Old National Bank shooting. LMPD officers arrived quickly. They exchanged gunfire with the shooter. The shooter is dead, but 2 officers, as you see, injured, 1 in critical condition, and 4 others killed there at the scene. And again, this happened at the Old National Bank building right across Preston from Louisville Slugger Field. Officers arrived there so quickly, they're still trying to determine if the gunfire exchange ended in the suspect's death or if it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But as Mark just told us, 8 people now being treated at U of L Hospital. When you first heard about all this, Deshaun Johnson, our Wave News security analyst, what was your initial thought?
My initial thought was that here we go again. That someone has taken advantage of a situation and turned it into a point of emphasis about them and hurt people along the way. And it just seems to be a common theme here lately.
You've studied these sort of incidents over the years. What's the trend that you're seeing?
What is anger management, outlets for anger, and what people are seeing more now, that we're connected more through social media, and that people are seeing that what's happening with other people doing it, and they're relaying that with themselves also. They're saying, well, I want to go out like that, or I want to be that person. I want to do that also. So we're not looking at the bigger picture and stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. We have to step back and look at the bigger picture as of why. But those are things that are not going to change immediately. But we have to understand that something's going on with our mental health and how we are relating with anger and how we're dealing with anger and how we're dealing with social issues and how we're dealing with people and overall.
And not only the anger that people in our society face, but then the trauma that people face because of incidents like this that will stay with them forever.
Correct. The trauma is across the board. It starts with the first responders, starts with the victims there. It starts also with the people who were victimized there, all the way down to even people who were reporting these. So we all have to look at it that with Louisville, there are smaller degrees of separation, as was reported that the governor said he knew someone there. And so that's how close-knit this community is and how connected we are.
Olivia mentioned that she knew some people there as well.
Yeah. So we are affected by this. It affects us deeply, and each one of these people has been moved by this. And I am moved by it because I'm a retired law enforcement, so I know what they're going through. I know what these officers are going through. I know how they're processing it right now. So that's what we have to look at. how do we continue to live in a society and hopefully help those that need help to stop this from happening.
What are law enforcement doing now? Are they gathering evidence? Are they going to the suspect's home? What are they doing right now?
They have a team in place for this, and what they have is that they'll have a team that may be drawing up a search warrant to go to the assailant's house, execute a search warrant there. It's all evidence gathering at this point. Evidence gathering, and making sure that everything is done from the evidence gathering standpoint to find out the root cause, to find out the why, to find out how troubled this person was. Like I said, how long have they been there? Were they fired? Did they leave? Were there red flags? How were their social media? So all these things is a process, but LMPD is very aware of the process, and they have processes in place that will make this work efficiently for them.
And we know that they're getting a lot of assistance from other state agencies, from the FBI, from the ATF. Will they be handing the case over since officers were involved with the gunfire exchange?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends on a lot of different factors at this point in time. They could, but sometimes they will work with the case, and they will have a lead agency on the case, and they will get assistance from all those other agencies as these things develop. Interagency work, they work together very well with federal and local and state to use their resources also to make sure they get everything together and get everything straight and gather as much evidence as possible.
Olivia had mentioned that, folks were arriving on the scene just heartbroken, crying, and just emotional. There are family members in our community today learning that their loved one went to work and is not coming home today. How do we deal with that loss?
As a community, we have to embrace the people who are affected by it. We have to, as I say, give them our thoughts and prayers, make phone calls to them, tell them that we support them, whether it be someone's connected to it, whether it be the law enforcement officers that were on the scene, or those who are connected to it. Let them know that we support them and that we as a community are not standing for situations like this.
All right, well, Deshaun Johnson, thank you so much for giving us your insight and your experience on what happened here today. And we're going to stay on top of it. Normally, we're bringing you midday news followed by Listens Live, but we're going to stay on top of this. And this breaking news story, it all started right there in that building to the right, the Old National Bank, right there, where someone entered at 8:30 this morning with a weapon and fired, killing 4 people and injuring 8 others. And in the exchange of gunfire, 2 of the 8 injured LMPD officers, 1 in critical condition. But this is kind of an ironic shot here as you look at that building, and then you have Slugger Field there in the background, which is a place for so many happy moments for families, a place where people go to bring joy. And now when you are at Slugger Field, and if you happen to look up and you see that building, it's going to bring back memories from this day, April 10th.
And this is a bank, so I'm assuming that there are surveillance cameras within the bank. Police will be looking at that very closely as well.
Yeah, you would imagine that they would have a lot of video to be pouring through, since the location of this building is such a big one, right?
Correct. And that's part of the grid search that they'll do also. They'll do a grid search, and they will not only pull the surveillance camera from that building, internal and external cameras, they will also ask for those businesses around the vicinity of that to pull their cameras to see and create a timeline for all this, and see where they can pick up the shooter, where the shooter first pulled in, where the shooter parked at, what vehicle do they have. So they'll create that timeline within that by asking those buildings in the surrounding areas to pull their video camera footage.
And we know that the shooter was a previous employee. We still do not know officially the shooter's name. We're going to go live now to Sean Bowdy, close to the scene. Sean.
Yeah, Myra, you were just talking there about the building and kind of how it might have been set up there, talking about how the bank may have been set up, especially one in such a popular area like this one. I've been inside that building before. It's not like a traditional standalone bank that you may see driving along maybe smaller areas of town. This one, when you walk into that building, you don't walk directly into a bank. And we have seen from angles down here where the front doors of that building have been shattered. So if something did happen right when you walk in, that's not actually the bank. When you walk in, you see the elevators, and that could take you to different floors. You've got a left way to go and a right way to go when you walk in, too. So you do walk into a bit of a foyer of sorts once you walk up the stairs there. But I just want to show you kind of where we are right now. So that the Old National Bank, if you look straight down Preston Street where we're standing right now, just past the light that we see, it is on the left-hand side of that. You can still see a lot of police officers down there trying to, at this point, who knows? It's been such a busy day for them, trying to investigate what happened, why it happened, who's responsible for it. Of course, we've looked into that as well. We're still trying to confirm the name of the person that they believe to be responsible. So many police officers have come and gone from this area since we've been here. We got on scene probably around 8:45, and for a good hour, it was just siren after siren driving past us. We've seen people that work downtown drive away from here, having to get out of here, having to leave the place they work, the place they're at every day, just to be safe and get out of a dangerous situation. We've also seen a couple of visitors that are in town staying at hotels just a couple blocks away from here that have walked up to us here asking what's happening because they had plans on that block to go explore this city that everyone here knows how special it can be. And now they won't get to experience the Louisville that we all know because of what happened here today. And police, the entire LMPD is obviously going to be concerned about this. They're going to be sad. They're going to have issues. You heard Deshaun talk about that, just how hard it is for these police officers to deal with something like this. And this is something that we've seen. I mean, what seems like every officer in the city is here. Just nonstop police coming, nonstop police going. They're going to keep working. We're going to keep working to make sure that we get that information as soon as we can, get it as accurately as possible. Anything that happens moving forward. For now, reporting live in downtown Louisville, Sean Dowdy, Wave News.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, I have been in that building before. In addition to the Old National Bank, there are many other offices, even condominiums in it. You've been in that building too. It, you know, when you go up, at first it's a beautiful building from the outside, but inside is gorgeous, and the views are very impressive. So it's just so sad to think that that took place there today.
And it's a tragedy. It's another tragedy for our city. That's something that we have to come to grips with and something that we have to deal with. But right now, the focus is on law enforcement and the job they have to do now and processing everything that's going on around them.
What are, more than likely, Deshaun, what do you believe that the area businesses are doing right now? Are they probably keeping people in place? What is standard protocol? Standard protocol right now is to shelter in place. If you have a business downtown, to shelter in place until you get the all clear from law enforcement. And they, depending on how in close proximity you are to the location, they may have been someone else already visited your business and asked you to, some of your listed employees who may have seen something, they possibly will be interviewed also. But if you're a little bit further away and you get the all clear, a lot of businesses may call it a day, send their employees home, because this is emotional. It's like a ripple effect.
Right. Sure.
It starts in one area, and as it goes out, it's still going to affect those businesses in the immediate area.
They probably heard the gunshots. They heard the police sirens happening. Seeing that, it definitely takes such a mental toll on someone when they see this type of thing.
Correct. And you, as like I don't even work downtown, and my phone started ringing. Mm-hmm. Are you okay? Are you downtown? Are you okay? So just imagine the text and information that's coming into those people who actually work in the downtown immediate area, what's going on with them and how their loved ones are feeling at this time. Deshaun,
oftentimes in situations like this, we turn to you and ask you, what do you do if this happens in your space, your work, the mall, wherever you are, the grocery store? What advice do you give to folks?
What advice I give to folks is first of all, know your surroundings. Know your exits, know your entrances.
Like when you're on a plane.
When you're on a plane,
look where the exit
it's the same thing. Just go to your daily routine, but do it cautiously. Understand that there's always a threat out there somewhere, but don't put it as a major part of your life. But I've talked to my team members. This is what we're going to do when this happens. This is how we're going to react. This is maybe the way we're going to go. And have them be aware and teach them that it's not a matter of if it may happen, it's when it may happen. You never know when you're open to the public or dealing with people. You're dealing with people's emotions. And when you're dealing with people's emotions and their mental status, it can go either way.
And especially, you know, as we continue to gather information about those who were killed or injured, it's going to hit the community very hard because some of these, you know, people, you know, the governor even said he lost a friend today and he has another friend who is in the hospital right now. So, you know, I think this is going to be something that will affect so many of us moving forward. And do you think that this will change anything with how LMPD is looking at security for the upcoming events surrounding Derby?
With every event that you have takeaways from that event, and I'm sure there will be some things that may change, maybe traffic routes or streets blocked off, or adding more officers or adding more cameras. There will be something that will change because anytime you have an incident, there are takeaways and you learn from those takeaways.
Congressman Morgan McGarvey just released a statement. Today is a dark day for our community. Just 1 week after a heartbreaking mass shooting at a school in Nashville, we mourn the loss of at least 4 more people in Louisville. These innocent lives were taken by another senseless act of gun violence, this time in downtown Louisville. I'm grateful to the brave officers at LMPD who quickly responded to the scene and no doubt have saved lives. He goes on to say that Louisville is a big small town where everybody knows everybody. In the coming days, we're going to lend support to our neighbors and loved ones, the families of those that we've lost, and our first responders. We will get through this tragedy as a community, and my office will continue working with federal, state, and local officials to provide resources and support as we move forward together. And that was another thing that we heard in the press conference of how quickly LMPD responded. And although we lost 4 lives today and several other people were shot, it unfortunately could have been worse.
It could have been worse. But this is what officers do, and they know when they take that oath and they put on that badge that this day may happen, that they may have to run towards danger, and that's what they do, because in order to protect and serve, you have to be the one that steps in to help people when there is danger, when there is a threat. Your job is to make sure that innocent people survive the threat, even if you have to put your own life in between that threat and the innocent people. And that's what these brave young ladies and men of LMPD do every day, day in and day out. And I know there's a lot of times that we criticize what they do, but at the end of the day, law enforcement is the initial part of our community. It's something that we need. We need those effective police officers that is going to run in when there's a threat of danger.
Yeah, that's you know, we've been talking about the U.S. Department of Justice coming out with the report for LMPD and some of the things that they will be changing with this consent decree that the city's entering into with the U.S. Department of Justice. We know that LMPD's been struggling with recruiting officers. And then you look at something like this and you just have to think how grateful to those police officers for responding so quickly, because we've seen other cases, the school shooting in Uvalde, where, you know, officers did not respond as quickly as people had hoped that they would.
And what you have the situation in Nashville and here in Louisville today, which is what 170 miles apart from each other, and you see the reaction of law enforcement, because at the end of the day, you are there to protect and serve and save lives, and you will do whatever you need to save the lives of the people that you protect and serve.
We don't know if the bank had security inside. That's something police...
As a police officer, you mean?
Yes, as a police officer. That's something we're still waiting to find out. But, you know, police officers can't be everywhere. What can we do, Deshaun, to feel safe?
What we can do is feel safe is to not let the fear consume us. I can't tell anyone how to make their lives safe or be safe. I can just advise you on things that you can do to make your day a little safer. But I don't know the answer to that question. That comes down to the individual, how safe they feel. Some people are safe in certain areas and not safe in certain areas. A lot of times it's perception of what is safe. So there's a lot of things that we're going to go through and reevaluate as individuals, where we work, where we live, where we shop, where we take our kids to play. We're going to start reevaluating all those things and kind of make a decision from that standpoint, what is safe to us.
Right. So when the first call went out, Deshaun, did everyone just respond to that scene so quickly, or how would they work with all of the different divisions to get officers there as fast as possible?
What you'll have immediate response from the area coverage area in the immediate area.
Okay.
Then you'll have the secondary area. They'll pull officers from other areas. So there are codes that they use, active shooter codes on the radio, so they'll understand and ask for more assistance. So then other districts will start to do what's called a backup coverage of other areas, and you'll have other law enforcement agencies that will step in also and help with coverage. You'll have Shively, you'll have J-Town, you have St. Matthews that will step in also and help with coverage while these officers are pulled downtown to handle the threat downtown.
So initially this was an active shooter is what the report came out as, and then they changed it to active aggressor. What is the difference between that? Can you explain?
An active shooter is that in progress. That means there's someone there with a weapon that is actively taking lives or attempting to take lives. That is an active aggressor is someone there who is showing those tendencies but not has escalated to that level yet.
Oh, okay. It's interesting that it started off as an active shooter and then it was an active aggressor. What would that tell you?
But it depends on who made the call. Sometimes at this point, when you start hearing gunshots and things you will get a lot of people calling in, and you'll get a lot of different information. It's the job of the first officer on the scene to assess the scene and report back what is going on the ground.
We've been talking about this, but for folks who are just joining us, Deshaun, explain to us what law enforcement is doing right now as far as looking into the suspect.
Right now it's the evidence collecting part of the investigation. They will kind of retrace the shooter steps. They will work backwards from the time the shooter entered the building, where they came from, where they parked at, how they get there, was there any information that the shooter left, was there a note, was there an email, anything on social media, was there anything left in the shooter's home, was there a problem with the shooter before the work. So now it's interviewing and investigating and collecting the evidence.
And as far as the victims go, notifying a family member that their loved one was a victim, that is just, there's no words. How does law enforcement go about doing that?
Well, it's even more difficult now, because now with social media and Twitter and all these other devices, information gets out a lot quicker than law enforcement wants it to get out. But when you have to go and notify someone that your loved one has been involved in a tragic incident and they may not be coming home, that is the toughest part of the job. That is the part that really tears at you, because you know that it's no fault of their own.
Yeah.
They just got up this morning and go to do their job that they enjoyed, they loved, and they were paid to do, and someone else has made that possible that they won't come home. So that's the hardest part, because when I talk about it, I feel it also, because I've been there, and it's difficult to deal with. So I do not want to be in those officers' positions to have to make that call, make that visit.
You've made that visit, and you've also been shot in the line of duty. So I know that you are also feeling for these officers who were injured today.
I do, because I know what they're going through. I feel their pain, because no one wants that knock on the door and say, come with us, your husband or wife or your spouse has been involved in something and we need to get you to the hospital immediately. That is the most heart-wrenching thing in the world, and it does. It hurts. It really hurts. But at the end of the day, the officers now in the immediate area, the secondary area, they know they still have a job to do.
Okay, we're going to be talking to Congressman Morgan McGarvey, shortly from Washington, D.C., but he did point out, too, that we're going to be learning the names of those people who were killed and those who were injured, and as he said, you know, this is a a small, big town, and so many of us know people perhaps who work in that building, someone who was there today. Imagine how scared you must have been if you had a loved one there and you heard about this mass shooting going on right there at 333 East Main Street, the old National Bank building. Now, some of the people were taken across the street right there to Louisville Slugger Field, so certainly a case like this, it's helpful to have a facility like that to go to bring some of the other people there to get them out of that building, right?
That's correct. They'll locate the management of an adjacent area, that they'll set up a command center, but they'll also set up an interviewing and assessment center in another location where detectives can interview, or people can be treated, or people can contact, because some people may have run out of their offices and left everything, so they have no way to contact their loved ones. So this creates an area for them, where a controlled environment where they can be in and make those calls and assess, and they can start assessing the needs of the victims at that point.
This is video that we're looking at. This is not a live picture, but that is what they had set up there. This is a mobile command center, but then they moved it out of that way. What kind of things would they use that command center for?
That command center will be equipped with just about everything. You can run telephone communications assessments on the ground. The commander at that point in the command center is kind of the point person that knows everything that's going on, what districts are being covered, what areas are being covered by what officers, who's on the ground, who's in charge of certain areas. That allows them to be on the ground and have full control of the situation going on around in the immediate area also.
When officers are trying to get a search warrant going for situations like this, what sort of things are they asking permission to look at?
What they're asking is electronic, because the search warrants have to understand what you have to have in it, what is being searched, physical areas, what physical areas did they have, house, room, car, what cars are registered to this person, bank accounts, what is social media, all those things that's going to ask the judge, say, this has just happened, we need to access this at this point. And they'll run down a list, and they have a standard list of things that they want to look at to create that timeline and create that whole evidence timeline.
It's going to take a lot of work ahead for them.
And unfortunately, with everything going on, and this is a continued problem, they have it down to a science at this point. And it's sad to say that we have that policy in place to where we have an active shooter process in place, but we do. And I'm sure LMPD has great men and women on the ground right now who are handling that as we speak.
Right. If you're just joining us, we know that you normally are watching Listens Live at this point, but I'm Shannon Cogan alongside Myra Ansari and our Wave News safety and security expert, Deshaun Johnson, as we're staying on top of this mass shooting that took place this morning at 8:30 in that building right there on East Main, the one to the right. It took place inside that building. About 8:30 this morning, officers quickly arrived. They exchanged gunfire, and the shooter is dead. We don't know if the shooter was killed by police or if the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But sadly, 4 other people were killed and 2 officers were injured. One is in surgery and in critical condition. The other one is not as seriously hurt. And we do know also that a total of 8 people are being treated right now at U of L Hospital, and that includes the 2 officers. Mayor Craig Greenberg held a press conference. Gosh, what time was that, Myra? I'm trying to remember.
It was probably around 11:30.
Was it 11? Okay, let's listen into part of what he said.
First, I ask that everyone around our city, around the country, around the world, pray with us for those who are currently at U of L Hospital, injured, fighting for their lives as a result of another act of gun violence.
And that was Mayor Craig Greenberg talking about this morning's shooting at the bank there that you see on the right in downtown Louisville, across from Louisville Slugger. Again, 4 killed, 8 injured. The shooter is dead. We do know that the shooter was a previous employee, but we don't know exactly what specifically drove the shooter to go into the bank and open fire this morning. LMPD responded within just minutes of getting those 911 calls this morning, and just a horrific scene spreading across our community this morning. And we've been talking to Deshaun Johnson, our WAVE safety and security expert, about this impacting our community. And Deshaun, you've said not this over and over again when we talk to you about these sort of situations. It's not if it'll happen to you, but when it'll happen to you. And it's just heartbreaking every single time.
Yes, it is. It is. And as you stated, that if this person was an employee or ex-employee, then it's possibly a targeted situation, and those that hurt the most, because you have the targeted active shooter and you have the random active shooter. Those who are targeted are people inside the building that were assumed to be someone that the aggressor had a problem with, and he targeted them to go in and cause bodily harm to them. And that's the part that really bothers you, because I'm sure there's some way, whatever the differences was, it could have been worked out without causing the tragedy that we are talking about today.
One source told me that on every Monday they had a standard meeting that would take place at the bank. So I'm sure we'll learn more. The press conference, LMPD is going to be holding another one today at 3 o'clock. And then there was another situation at JCTC that we heard about too. At first there were concerns that that was another mass shooting, but it was a shooting that took place. We're still gathering information about that, but the alleged shooters took off before police could get to that scene.
We don't believe that they are connected at all. So.
Yeah, LMPD is saying that this, in the Old National Bank building shooting, that person acted alone, was a lone aggressor. And again, LMPD asking people stay away from downtown. As you look in this area, you can see Main Street right up there toward the top, and no cars are on that right now because police have blocked off many roads in our area.
And they said that this investigation is going to go late into the night. It's not going to wrap up anytime soon. So a lot of work ahead for these officers as they're dealing with so much grief themselves.
Yes, especially when one of their own is involved, and that's the hardest part, because you are still thinking about the injuries to the other officers, and that weighs on you. But you still, as I said, have a job to do. You have to process the evidence and go through that, because as you say, being a small city, it is also a small department. And each one of these officers, in one way or another, are connected to one and each other. So I'm sure that whoever the injured officers are, they're connected to all these officers who are out there on the ground right now.
Officers routinely go through active shooter training. That's a part of how often do they go through that sort of thing?
It just depends on how it's set up. From each department is different. Each department is different with the active shooter training and how they train the officers and how they retrain them. It's different from each department. So there's no set way you have to go through it, but it's different for each department.
Okay. Well, Deshaun, thank you again. You'll be staying with us as we continue to stay on top covering this horrific situation from this morning in downtown Louisville, leaving 4 killed, 8 injured, and the shooter also dead. I'm Shannon Kogan, and alongside Myra Ansari and Deshaun Johnson here, I want to thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand my microphone over now to WAVE News anchor John Ball, who is here for continuing coverage on this. And right now, here is Brian Good to give us an update on the surrounding areas when it comes to traffic.
All right, thanks, guys. Here's where we stand on this. Again, we are still waiting word on any additional changes to this. It'll happen. I'm sure there will be as the day evolves, but it still stands that really it's the center portion there of where the incident took place there near on Main Street near Slugger Field between Hancock and Floyd. That area certainly is blocked off, but there is a lot of traffic in general in downtown streets, as you might imagine. A lot of folks kind of maneuvering around. The interstates are in good shape. It's all about the surface streets right now as far as the traffic that has been building up. So just be a little patient. If you have to venture into downtown and you're waiting for loved ones to come back home from either their place of work or from maybe a doctor's office or a hospital in downtown, the main area that's closed off is right there on Main, right at the point there of Old National Bank at Slugger Field, all the way down to Clay. And of course, this is a one-way street, so all the traffic, of course, they don't have to expand it too far out, but it's certainly a lot more of a detour. You'll see those set up as you head through the city, kind of surrounding that spot. Of course, we're still waiting word of the incident that took place there at 8th and Chestnut. Was not at JCTS, but it was in that area. And again, that is still very active setup too. The traffic sensor has been at times going flat out red in that area, indicating that traffic constantly is being diverted. But I got an assumption that that area is likely going to be closed off there, especially as you head toward Chestnut. So I'll be watching that as we head the remainder of the afternoon. So a lot of the heavy traffic, of course, right now is on the western and central portion of the city. It's where most of the traffic is being basically forced away from the city at the moment to kind of get everyone out of there that needs to and get the area calmed down and hopefully set and staged ready for what happened for the afternoon round of traffic. And of course, schools will be entering some of the traffic flow too here in about 2 hours from now. There's that live view again from our Skytrack camera showing the scene of the Old National Bank on the first floor of that building. On the right-hand side, there's Slugger Field. That's the Preston Highway side to exit into Slugger Field. The Main Street side is the one, of course, is facing to your right-hand side on top there, heading to the south. All right, you look at I-65, again, traffic there around the Muhammad Ali exit. Everything is light. It has calmed down quite a bit in downtown the past 2 hours, especially. We've seen traffic really thin out in that area, and that's still the case as you look into downtown Louisville from the area Trimark cameras. We're watching it carefully. I'll let you know if there's any, again, changes on some of the street changes and closures, especially as we try to see what happens here with the additional traffic being added into the mix for this afternoon. John Bolenmeyer, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Brian. We just got a tweet from Mayor Craig Greenberg saying that they've set up a family assistance center for anyone involved in today's shooting at the Kentucky International Convention Center at 3rd and Market entrance. Victims and family members, please go to this location for updates. So that's just coming in from the mayor.
Okay, further complicating matters today has been a shooting at 8th and Market. Many of the officers who were on scene responding to this mass shooting had to rush out and deal with that. Let's get out to Mark Stevens to learn a little bit more about what is going on at 8th and Market.
John, I'm actually at U of L Hospital. There might have been a communication mix-up in the back room. What I can tell you is when that shooting occurred, there were a number of officers who were here at the hospital that ended up taking off lights and sirens. We saw officers who were running to their squad cars so they could get to that scene. Then later we learned that LMPD told us that while there had been a shooting, it was not another mass shooting, and that the suspects had actually run from the scene. That's what I know from the hospital regarding the mass shooting here at the hospital, at Old National Bank. 8 people were taken from that scene to here downtown at U of L Health. 2 of those people are officers. 1 is in critical condition who has been undergoing surgery. We don't know the extent of some of the other injuries. We do know, we know 1 patient was shot in the calf. They have been treated. We were told that they were just thankful to be alive. As we've been watching this, we've seen Mayor Craig Greenberg, Deputy Mayor David James here as well, and then we also saw a lot of the officers. The one thing that has changed in the several hours that have been here, there were crime scene units that were here gathering evidence. We saw them leaving the ER with brown paper bags, we assume with evidence images that they would need to support their investigation. Those units have since left, so at this point we are waiting for a press conference to be done with U of L Health to give us a better idea of the extent of the injuries that they've seen and have been treating. For now, I'll throw it back to you guys in the studio. This is Mark Stevens outside U of L Hospital.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. And John, you're just coming joining us and helping us out with coverage here. Just a horrific morning, coming off of the Easter weekend holiday, coming off of spring break, people going into work on a Monday morning, and then several people not going to come home.
You know what struck me this morning is 34 years have gone by, I believe. I woke up on, it was a Tuesday morning, just like this. A beautiful morning, September 14th, and we all learned about the Standard Gravier massacre. 12 people killed there and 8 wounded. Many lives changed forever. 34 years later, like nothing's changed. At the time, Louisville's mass shooting event was like one of the top for a long, long time in the country. It is now not even in the top, 20. Yet here we are again, Deshaun.
Yes, we are, and I concur with you. I was there on my way to court that morning, and I remember the call coming over the radio, all available units go to scan and review, because we were unaware of the word mass shooting at that time. That was an active shooter was something that was not in our vocabulary. But here we are. But we know now we have a different vocabulary for it, an active shooter situation. And I agree with you. Nothing has changed. A lot of people's lives are devastated today because of one person's grievances with an institution or a person where they worked.
Yeah, that just getting on set here. What is the latest, Myra, on the shooter and the motive?
We do know, we don't officially, the shooter's name has not been released, but we do know that the shooter was a previous employee of the bank. And as Deshaun has told us this morning, more than likely there were red flags with situations like this, and that's what police are going to be looking into. There is a name circulating around, but we are not releasing it until police confirm that with us. Until we get multiple confirmations, just to be safe. But we more than likely, police are at that shooter's residence, right, Deshaun?
Yes, they have a protocol in place for an active shooter protocol and how to go about it, and that's one of the places that they will connect with as far as the residents, look for vehicles, look for if he video cameras in other areas. And as you see on the video, they're collecting evidence. You have an evidence team that has been expanded to mark and collect evidence, so they can put together a timeline of how everything started from where this initiated to where they are right now.
And we don't know, we know the shooter is dead, but we do not know if the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound or if police shot the shooter and killed him. How will they figure that out and go through that?
Well, the investigative team that they have together will put together the process of the timeline, and they would look at the shooter and type of weapon and it was used, and they have assistance from other agencies such as maybe the FBI, ATF will come in and help them out with that, putting those timelines together and putting how that happened and where he was shot, position of the body. All those things are part of the investigative process that they'll put together and release that information as they get it.
Let's talk a little bit more about LMPD's response to this. We have seen, I mean, you're watching every 4 or 5 days another mass shooting event somewhere in the country, and you know how it all unfolds. You start talking about the shooting itself, police response, then they look into the guns and whether or not they were legally purchased, and then people try to politicize it on both sides. It's the same thing every single time. Some of the most recent police response in Nashville was heroic and amazing because we've all gotten to see the body cam video of that by the officers. Ones before that have been highly suspect. Obviously, the school shooting, people are still criticizing people about and they lost their jobs. In this case, it sounds like LMPD was unbelievably heroic with a 3-minute response. And do you know anything at all about what went on from the time they got there?
Depending on how the call came in, the call could have came in as a disagreement, call could have came in as an assault, could have came in as shot fired, depending on how the officer received the call. And that's something that we can pick up from the radio transmission, because once the officer is on the scene, then he will advise dispatch what is actually going on. If he gets on the scene and he's confronted, then he's going to say, I'm involved in an active shooter situation, and then that's going to escalate it. Then they're going to ask for other units. So obviously there was something that was said on the radio that made those officers feel that they needed to get there quickly. And so depending on how it was dispatched to the officer, and once you get maybe the body cameras and to get a copy of some of the dispatch, then you'll get a better understanding of what that officer was facing when he got to the scene, because a lot of officers, as far as the information, have no idea that they're involved in an active shooter situation until they're on the ground.
You know, as I was watching the body cam video here in Nashville, it occurred to me, you know, these guys are going through, and you've seen it in the movies so many times, you know, how the officers, you know, bust in the room and case it with the guns. There were, even though this turned out okay and they got the shooter in Nashville, there were so many opportunities as I was watching that where the police officer still could have been shot and killed, even following proper protocol. You know, that moment when they come in the room, if the person's waiting, they could just shoot him right there.
Well, the situation that happened where the officer stood down while the shooter was shooting people, myself and a lot of officers had the same thought process. That would never happen with us, never. And every officer involved in the LMPD, I'm sure, had the same ideology, thought that would never happen. So that opportunity, that when it came today, I had no problem with them, what they've done, because I would have done the same thing. When lives are in danger, you are there to protect and serve, and that is what you signed up for.
Okay. Be Good just passed me a note saying JCTC is on lockdown right now because of that incident that we had talked about earlier, about a unrelated shooting that happened shortly after, a couple hours after this morning's incident. They're not connected, but the JCTC is on lockdown after a shooting there.
Okay, how hectic is it being a Louisville police officer these days? I mean, we see a great example of it today. You're at a mass casualty event and you have to rush off not far away. And we're being told one person is dead in the shooting at JCTC and another person in the hospital. So, I mean, it's just crazy. You're responding to a mass shooting that's got the eye of the nation on it, and you have to run off to this other shooting over here, too.
But now you have what we call a secondary event. And you never know what's going to happen. And what they would do is dispatch available units that are covering the perimeter of the first shooting to engage with the possible shooter at the second event.
And that's something police had talked about. Major Humphrey had mentioned that even in this situation where there is so much law enforcement at the bank and probably the shooter's house as well, that there is enough law enforcement to cover other incidents that do unfold in our city as well. We're going to go live now to Olivia Russell, who's close to the scene right now. Olivia.
Yeah, Myra, I can see just inside the bank right now, and I want to show you that scene because right now, I mean, it looks like officers are just really regrouping and trying to figure out those next steps. It looks like they've been huddled up in certain areas at certain points, then going out doing what they need to do. But we've noticed the Emergency Management Agency, that mobile command center, has moved closer to the scene, and they've told us they're expecting to be out here really all day investigating this, and they're really just getting a look at this, going in and out of that building. Of course, they want to make sure they get all the information that they can here on this, because there's still a lot of things that they haven't been able to tell us yet, including, you know, more details on that shooter. We're told that he was a former employee of the bank, but really no motive has been released or any of that. So we're just kind of on standby, watching people around here, because a lot of people just want to come by. They want to see what's going on, but they keep asking for space too. You know, they have to get in there, they have to do this job, they want to make sure they're doing the investigation right, and they have cars that are coming in and out of here. You don't want to be in this area right now. You can just watch us. Don't worry about coming down here to take your own picture. But an emotional scene for the people who do need to be down here, because I've seen some people hugging, crying, people I'm assuming are close to the victims here at the bank. And in that case, we've just given them their space, even if they aren't connected. I know this is an emotional scene for a lot of people. You might know someone, you might just live down here or go to the bank, and that's going to give you a reason to be emotional. So I've said a while ago that I really encourage you to just reach out to anyone that you know right now, any of your loved ones, even if they aren't downtown. You might know someone, and I know this community is so tight-knit, so close, and really pretty small. So reach out to your loved ones. You don't know who could be affected by this. And as I said, just an emotional scene, and we're going to stay out here and keep an eye on things. It doesn't look like there's a lot going on the outside, but I know they're doing a lot of work there on the inside of the bank. But I want to send things back to you all.
All right. Thank you so much, Olivia. And I want to remind folks that the city has set up a family assistance resource assistance center for anyone involved in today's shooting at the Kentucky International Convention Center at 3rd and Market entrance. Victims and their family members, they're asking folks to go to this location.
The reason why, when I jumped on board here, that I asked about what has been confirmed about the shooter or not is because, yes, there's a lot out there on social media, but I received a call this morning from someone with direct knowledge of this who said that this is one of those cases where the shooter had been terminated last week and came into the morning meeting and opened fire. Now, that, again, not confirmed. That is just through a good source of mine. But I want to ask Deshaun here, that the questions will arise then. That happens a lot in our society. And if you remember back to the first many mass shootings we had in our country, that was usually the MO of what was going on. And a lot of companies then beefed up their security. There will be questions asked about security here at Old National Bank, but what have we learned in law enforcement over the years about situations like that where people mentally unstable have something happen to their job status and then come back firing?
Well, what we've learned in law enforcement is that how to manage it better, from dealing with from how we train, how we come to a situation, how we deal with it. So we've managed to make sure law enforcement is aware of these situations can happen and how this process works and what you do to do when an active shooter is there. The first thing an active shooter, stop the active shooter. That's the first and foremost, stop the active shooter. And we have learned that this has continued to happen, and law enforcement has gotten better with that as of response times. They're better equipped to deal with it versus being situations years ago when officers got to a mass shooter, they were possibly outgunned by the shooter.
Yes.
So officers have learned, and each time one of these things happen, there are takeaways that become training aids down the road that hopefully will save lives down the road.
When it comes to disgruntled employees, we've been talking about mental health in all of this as well, that there usually are red flags with the aggressor, the shooter, and those things cannot be ignored.
Yes, and sometimes as a security professional, I have been hired sometimes when they call me and say, we have an employee, we're going to terminate, so we're going to want you there on scene, or this person that showed these tendencies, we want to hire someone to be on scene for a couple of weeks just to make sure this doesn't happen. There are some agencies and some businesses that have those plans in place. But remember, that is a cost, and some businesses just can't afford that cost. This person actually knew there was a morning meeting, and that was probably the best time to initiate their plan of action. People that come back, they know the layout, they know the activities, day-to-day activity of the people who they're targeting. So that makes it harder. So it's hard to pinpoint. There's so many businesses. Who's to say that yours is next? But what you can do is take the appropriate precautions to make sure that your employees are aware if something does happen, how to make them safe.
What do you do when someone walks in and opens fire like that? What do you do?
Then you go through the process. Run, hide, fight. Those things come into play, and those things will always be the first thing you think of. When you hear shots, run. If someone's cut, hide. Third one, fight. Those are the process, and that will continue.
What do we do in the security world about a growing phenomenon that is so difficult to secure against with these shootings?
And that's what makes what those law enforcement officers in every agency across the board harder, because you're trying to predict someone's actions who is mentally unstable. And to try to predict the actions and the activities of someone who is mentally unstable is very close to not even happening.
Just a heartbreaking day for our community. Again, just to recap, a shooting at the Old National Bank this morning around 8:30. 4 people killed, 8 injured. The shooter dead in this incident. We don't know officially the shooter's name. We do know that the shooter was a previous employee of the bank, and 2 officers were shot in this. One is in critical condition. 8 people were injured. Again, they are at U of L Hospital, and the mayor went to the hospital a short time ago. There is a family assistance center for victims to go to at the convention center downtown, but just a very heartbreaking day for our community.
I'm interested in what you guys thought as we watched the press conference today, and we watched a mayor presiding over a press conference who had somebody walk into his office and try to take him and others out by shooting him. The shots so close that he had on a tight sweater, and one of the bullet holes went through right in the part where the sweater was clinging to his back. So you've had a mayor who has somehow miraculously survived a possible mass shooting event in his campaign office, presiding over a press conference for a mass shooting event, another one here in the Louisville area. It just seems so surreal.
So real, and then he's only been mayor for 4 months. Like,
yes.
to deal with something like this in our community is just a lot.
What thoughts are going through your head when you're just watching this man already off to this kind of start after having something like that happen to him?
Well, being involved in a shooting event, all the emotions come back. They come back. It's like it just happened. So I'm sure what he's going through, he's feeling all those emotions of fear, those emotions of panic. All those things come back, and you understand what these people are going through because you have been there, and you understand how connected everyone is. It does. When I first found out, it came back. It was like, oh my God, here we are again. And then I start flashback to times when I was engaged, and that's the same thing. It's those emotions and those feelings never go away, but you feel it. You feel for these victims. You feel for their loved ones. You feel it because you have been touched by it.
What's it like in the hospital when they get that call? Like, you're going to have a number of patients coming in at one time.
The one thing about that University of Louisville House is a level 1 trauma center, and they are good at what they do. If I'm injured, that's where I want to be at. And when I was injured, they took great care of me. So I'm sure the staff and the doctors and the nurses there are doing every life-saving effort to make sure that every victim that comes through that door is taken care of.
You were talking about all these memories flooding back, and when something like this happens. When you talked earlier about standard review, what was your involvement in that? How close did you get to?
I was in the building.
So you went in the press room there?
Yes. Because it came across as a shooting.
Yeah.
And they wanted available units, and I was going to court right there at 6th and Jefferson, so I'll go by.
So you were in the building before they really knew that the active shooter threat was done?
Yes. So it was unusual at that time because we're something we weren't used to.
We're going to go live now to Kennedy Hayes, live at JCTC, where one person has died. Another person is in the hospital after a shooting that happened a few hours after the mass shooting in downtown Louisville. Kennedy.
That's right, Myra. We've just learned from LMPD. One person is dead, another person in the hospital. As you can imagine, a very emotional and chaotic morning for police and everyone involved. If you take a look behind me, you can see there is still some police presence out there, but we've been out here for about an hour. The shooting took place around 11 a.m. We know that there are at least 2 suspects involved. Police right now are still searching for those suspects. We also know that when police arrived just before 11 a.m., those 2 suspects fled, one on foot, the other one in their car. We do not yet know any motive or information on the suspects themselves. Again, we do know that 2 people were injured during this shooting. One person is dead, the other is in the hospital. We're going to stand by and talk to police and give you updates throughout the morning. And again, right now, police are focused on finding those 2 suspects. Reporting live, Kennedy Hayes, Wave News.
Thank you, Kennedy. We are again with Deshaun Johnson, our safety and security expert, and quite a vast resume in dealing with these kinds of issues. One of the questions that popped in my mind here about your experience is, what have we learned over the years that makes it better to get to the bottom of what triggers these incidents?
Well, what we've learned is that we start to look at the mental health side. For many, many years, we never looked at the mental health side of it, and we're starting to approach it differently from that side of it. We understand now that mental health plays an important and huge role in the actions of some of these mass shooters, how they're connected, when they didn't get help. We're better at looking and finding red flags now where it wasn't before. We do a deeper dive into that person's lifeline and how they're connected and things that people are connected to them. So we as law enforcement, our investigative tools are a lot better now to understanding the why.
And how do we go about, we were talking about this, looking at those red flags, if someone's, a disgruntled employee or, just angry, like, where do you start taking those threats or those things seriously that something could possibly happen, if that makes any sense?
Well, the first is just what you said. When do you start taking them seriously? You start taking them seriously as soon as they're made.
Okay, we're going to stay right there. We're going to pause here. We have Morgan McGarvey ready with us right now. We've already seen the governor rush over. We've had the mayor, as we were just talking about, already got shot at in his life. Morgan, I'm wondering what thoughts are going through your mind right now as you watch all of this unfold.
I'm just heartbroken. John, I mean, you've been in Louisville, I don't even know how long. You know what it is in this town. We're a big, small town. When people ask you what school you went to, they mean your high school. It's because we all know each other. And if you didn't know someone who was involved in today's awful shooting, you know somebody who did. This is a time when our community is gonna come together but the collateral damage from this gun violence, I think, is going to reverberate for a long time here in Louisville. So I'm heartbroken.
Morgan, after covering situations like this over and over, what are we going to do? What's going to change?
Yeah, I've heard from several of my colleagues today, colleagues who unfortunately have experienced this same type of tragedy, this mass shooting in their own communities. And whether it's Michigan or Colorado or California, people reaching out and saying, here's some things you can do to help your community. It's awful that we have that kind of playbook. That this continues to happen. And I promise you that we are fighting. We will continue to look at policy situations, but I think today is about grief. It's about comfort. I'm in Washington right now. I will be leaving as soon as this interview to get on the next flight home so I can come and just be there to support, to help grieve. We're talking to the White House. We're talking to places where there are federal resources, unfortunately, for everything from mental health to other types of trauma that people experience. We can bring some of those resources back to help Louisville. That's what we're going to do. But this is a sad day. And it's a sad day where a lot of people are going to remember where they were when they heard this. My district director heard the gunshots from where he lives. One of my good friends and high school classmates had to get out of her car and run away from the intersection. The police came and said, there's an active shooter, get out and run. This is something where we're going to need to hug our loved ones tonight, make sure we continue to look out for each other. And then, of course, there's going to be time for these policy discussions in the coming days.
It's sad and we're grieving, but it's also scary times, Morgan. I mean, these days now, when I go take a dinner break, I drive past about 3 shot spotters in our town. We've already had this mass shooting broken up some of the focus because another shooting where another person was killed. Your thoughts on just coping existing in a place that's kind of scary now?
Yeah, look, we have to do something about gun violence. That's why I've joined the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force here in Washington. It's why I've signed on to bills such as banning assault-style rifles, such as making sure there are universal background checks. I'm not going to accept there's nothing we can do to keep this from happening. Unfortunately, now the tragedy of a mass shooting has reached our community in Louisville. And, it's horrible. It's awful. When the names of the victims start to come out, we're all going to know people on them. And there's stuff we can do. I believe there's more we can do to address everything from mental health to public safety to guns, and we will. But I think right now it's wrapping our arms around each other, dealing with the grief, and making sure that people are okay, and the first responders, making sure the first responders who ran into this situation, who without doubt saved lives, making sure they're okay and dealing with the trauma and stress of this as well.
I think we often hear the questions like, when is it going to end? When is it going to be enough? When, and that's just one of those questions that we never seem to get an answer to.
It doesn't seem like it's going to end. But what is the first best step, in your opinion, Morgan, that we could take, at least as a community in Louisville, to try to at least reduce the chances that you're going to go into work on a Monday morning and get your office shot up like this?
Yeah, no, I've been working on this for a long time, and John and Myra, you all probably know a woman in our community named Whitney Austin, who survived a mass shooting in Cincinnati as she was walking into work and was shot 12 times, miraculously survived. She and I drafted a bill in the state legislature in Kentucky, the Crisis Aversion Rights Retention Order, that would actually help take firearms temporarily away from people who are experiencing crisis. We're talking about a mass shooting today and the trauma and awful, heart-wrenching damage that goes along with that. 60% of gun death in this country is still by suicide. I think that having that type of extreme risk protection or crisis aversion rights retention law would help. I think making sure that we have universal background checks would help. I think banning the assault-style rifles would help. I don't know what kind of weapons were used in today's shooting yet, but we have seen these weapons of war too often on our streets. I think there are steps we can and should take. We know what they are. And I think that we have to have people willing to do those things.
It doesn't appear like it's going to happen, though, does it? I mean, every time these things happen, nothing changes. So many feel.
I remain optimistic. optimistic, and you know, I'm gonna remain optimistic on this. In the last Congress, the 117th Congress, they passed the first gun legislation in the last 30 years. And did it get everything? No, it certainly didn't, but it's a start. And I think how we start is to have these conversations honestly, right? And part of having an honest conversation is listening honestly and listening to the steps that we can take, right, that will make our communities safer while preserving rights. And so I think that those are conversations we can and should continue to have. And I can tell you it's certainly what I'm going to continue to fight for. Because my kids were actually with me in Washington today. I had to leave and come back to the office, and I'm getting on a flight on the way home. And when I told them, I felt like I owed them an honest explanation. Why am I leaving? And I told them there was a mass shooting in Louisville. And my twins, who are in the 5th grade, just grew ashen. And the first thing they said was, oh no, was it at a school? We shouldn't have that kind of commonality when our kids, when they first hear there's a shooting, believe it's at an elementary school.
Wow.
So I'm going to fight. I'm in this job because I believe that there are things we can do and we can come together and we can make progress. And I am going to continue to do that. That doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but it's something I'm going to push for to happen tonight and every night going forward until we do make some progress and come together on why these tragedies that happen are almost so uniquely American.
Morgan, we've been talking about mental health, but just kind of talk to us again about what we need to do to help people who are struggling so we don't have situations like this, so we can prevent situations like this.
Yeah, be vigilant, be on guard. If you think someone's in crisis, help them out, right? Help them out. Let somebody know there are resources available that I think far too often go unused. As for today, I know that the mayor is setting up something at the International Convention Center. I talked to the mayor this morning for families, for victims, for people in the community who are just struggling with the aftermath of today's trauma. But if you know someone who is going through something and is maybe saying things that make you uncomfortable, don't just sit on it. Right? This is not the era. This is not the time to think, oh, nothing bad will happen. I think we've now seen in Louisville, Kentucky, right? Which I'm a lifelong Louisvillian. I went to Manual High School. When I got married, I married a Missouri girl, and unfortunately she came back to Kentucky. We're raising our kids here. This is my home. We've not seen something like this in a long, long time. When we say it doesn't happen in Louisville, it's because it doesn't happen. And now our community has been rocked by this as well. I think it's time to hug each other, keep watch over each other, love each other, show the kindness and the resilience that I know the people of Louisville have. And then, of course, like I said, let's talk about some policy solutions as well. And I think having people from Louisville, from a place like Kentucky, advocating for public safety, advocating for ending gun violence will have weight and will be powerful in Washington.
I think the challenge in so much of this, every time we go through something like this, is putting politics aside. If and when we can ever do that and finally see some change, how are you going to make that happen?
Well, you know, I think you say put politics aside. I try not to cast blame, but I'm not going to put policy aside. And I do believe there are things we can do, and there are policies that will help keep this from happening, that will help keep people from sending their husbands, their wives, their sons and daughters, moms and dads to work in the morning and making sure that they come home, right? That parents can drop their kids off at school and feel relatively safe that they're going to come home. I think there are policies that we can do that have proven effective in other places in the world and other states in the country that we can enact to make sure we are keeping our loved ones safe. And I don't think that has to be a political conversation, but it is a policy conversation. And we've got to decide whether those are policies we want to ultimately enact. I think we should.
Morgan, what do you say when you get into a debate with somebody who comes at it from the other angle? Like, I remember, people laugh about this, but I remember an All in the Family episode long ago where Archie Bunker was allowed to do a rebuttal to an editorial on a local newscast. And his idea to stopping, at the time, air flight hostage situations, hijackings were a big deal. And his idea was, if you hand a gun to every single person who comes up on the plane, then everybody's armed, and when somebody stands up and tries to hijack the plane, there's strength in guns. And people laughed about the ridiculousness of that back then. Now, over the decades, there's been kind of a movement to we're maybe a safer society. Maybe Archie Bunker wasn't so crazy if more people are armed. I'm interested in your thoughts on that growing movement actually toward that bizarre moment in TV history way back when.
Well, look, there are already more guns than people in this country. And you know what's happened? We're not getting safer. What we're seeing is a rise in violence. We're seeing a rise in mass shootings. We're seeing a rise in gun-related deaths that is unlike other places in the world. And so we can respect people's rights while also recognizing that those rights aren't absolute, that you're not eligible to have a tank that you can drive to work, that we don't allow you to have just rocket-propelled grenades or anything like that. That there are certain people, like universal background checks, right? This is something that enjoys over 90% support from the American public. That just a basic background check to see that you are someone who hasn't committed a crime, who hasn't done something wrong, that you're eligible to buy a firearm. That is a common sense gun reform. That is absolutely something we should enact. I think banning assault-style rifles. These are weapons of war. People don't hunt with these guns. These are guns that are meant for one purpose. And when we see that purpose carried out, it's awful. And again, we talk about all the damage and all the collateral damage. But I think these are things we can and should do and have these types of policy conversations. But, again, I stress today, I know I felt like I just got kicked in the stomach and stepped on my chest, and somebody, hit my heart when I heard there was a mass shooting in my hometown. And I am counting down the seconds until the American Airlines flight leaves Washington, D.C. airport so I can get home just to be there, to go visit the police officers, to visit with the families, to visit with my community who's been rocked by gun violence. Because I think that's what we need to do today. We need to hold each other. We need to give each other a hug. And then I think not political conversations, but have these policy conversations in the days to come.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about this, the time of year, makes it even worse. Here we are. I'm going to be honest with you here. This is my notes I'm starting to take and starting to prepare for the best time of the year of Thunder over Louisville, and then the Kentucky Derby, and then you wake up on a Monday morning and you see this unfold. So it is just remarkably awful.
It is awful. It is awful that there are children who are may have lost their mom or dad, maybe their grandmother, grandfather, their aunt, their uncle, lost a friend. It is beyond heartbreaking, the conversation, Morgan, that you shared with your children that you had to have explaining why you have to leave. And I'm sure many of us, when we go home tonight, if the TV's on, we'll have to explain it to our kids about what happened.
Yeah, Morgan, that detail about kids immediately thinking it was possibly a school shooting, that really says a lot, doesn't it?
It says too much, and it's I do believe there's something we can do, and I think we've got to have obviously leaders who have the courage to do it. But today is about making sure that our community is okay. And John, you said it. This is the time. And look, I tell people all the time, I think Kentuckians, Louisvillians, we've got as much pride as anybody in the country, in our city and our state. This is the time when we show off to the world what we have to offer. And instead, the world is saying it's another mass shooting, this time in Louisville, Kentucky. And it's heartbreaking. It's awful. And I know that our community will come through this and will be strong, but there are people whose lives are forever changed. And Myra, as you said, without doubt, someone lost a parent today. Without doubt, someone lost a child today. We know that loved ones, friends, family in our tight-knit community are going to be grieving, and this grief's not going to go away soon.
Okay.
Morgan McGarvey, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on all different facets of this and how it is personally affecting you and your family as well. We look forward to seeing you here, and we will continue pushing forward. Thank you very much, Morgan.
Thank you, guys.
Deshaun, we've been talking to you all morning about this, and it's just, I think like when I said that I have to talk to our kids about this, like,
yeah,
it kind of made me feel sick because I feel like we have to protect their world. There's some little kid out there that is just going to be devastated that their loved one, their mom, their dad, there's someone isn't going to be home. And that is just heartbreaking.
How, when it comes to education of children and things like mass shootings and safety, like how low do you go and how do you tailor your efforts the younger that you go?
Well, we used to go higher, but as these incidents continue to occur, we have to go lower with our children at a younger age, because we're coming off one of the most coveted holidays of the year, which talks about love, and we wake up Monday morning and here we are. But we have to understand that kids are more perceptive now than they were. The world is opened up to them more. We have first responders, law enforcement people, people just going to work. Now their kids are going to be looking like, are you going to be okay?
Yeah, they'll be worried if mom and dad are going to come home. Okay? Are you going to be okay?
Because in school, we had to go through an active shooter training. Because the schools are putting those in place now. So educating your kids is a parent decision. I'm not going to say what age you should start, but I'm thinking you should start quite early.
Right.
Okay, stand by.
Yeah, we're going to go to, you heard us talk about Whitney Strong several times this morning. Survived a horrific shooting a couple of years ago. Morgan McGarvey also spoke about change that he's worked with her about gun violence and what she's been through.
Well, Whitney, let's just first of all talk about the first thoughts that went through your head when you first heard the news this morning.
I thought, I can't believe it's happening again. It feels like it's unescapable, and now it's happening in our city. And then my second thought was to think of everybody impacted and to pray for everybody that's impacted and pray for lives to be saved.
Whitney, for people who don't know your story, briefly take them through what happened to you and how events unfolded and what you did.
So my shooting was on September 6, 2018 in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was eerily very similar to what happened here today. It was at my workplace, a bank, and I expected that I was walking into work to do my job, but instead I was one of the last people to walk into a mass shooting that had erupted that morning. And by the grace of God, I was rescued by the heroic Cincinnati police officers and whisked away to the heroes at University Hospital in Cincinnati who ultimately saved my life. And my story is unbelievable. I was shot 12 times. None of those bullets had any major organs or arteries. And it was in that moment of realizing that I would survive, that I would get back to my children, to my husband, my family, that I and my husband decided that we would do everything we could to make sure that we prevent this moving forward. And it's hard for me because in moments like this, I know that we haven't done enough collectively. We all haven't done enough to stop this.
Well, okay, let's go over the wins and losses. First of all, your victories that you have celebrated on this long road.
Yes, thanks for keeping it positive. The biggest success that we've seen in the last 4 years is the passage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. We worked closely with Senator McConnell and other U.S. senators to make sure that we had the bipartisan team necessary for that law to be enacted. And there are many provisions within it. but all of them bipartisan in nature, and thousands of lives will be saved as a result. At Whitney Strong, we also believe in the importance of making change within our communities as individuals, as leaders, as business leaders. And so we have a program called Save a Life, where we have trained over 1,000 people between Louisville and Cincinnati on evidence-based trainings that can make their communities safer now. And so we really come at this issue from all angles, bringing everyone together. And we have seen big wins, but in moments like this, it doesn't feel like enough when mass shootings hit your backyard.
What are the biggest losses? What is the biggest mountain you face?
The biggest mountain we face is bringing people together on this issue that is too often viewed as a political issue. Now, I can give you many pieces of data to show you that that's not actually the truth, that there is bipartisan support on both sides of the aisle for many policies, but too often after these things happen, they become political in nature and progress is stifled. And so as an organization, we fight against that. We provide access to data. We work exclusively with bipartisan teams of lawmakers to show that there is hope and there is room for change. But it's a difficult fight, and we need more people to join in with us.
Whitney, there are 8 people at U of L Hospital right now who have been shot and so far survived. You were in their shoes at one point. Tell us what they're going through.
I think every situation is entirely different. I have no idea what the physicians are telling them, what the nurses are telling them, how many surgeries they have in front of them, how close they are to death. It's just an unbelievable position to be put into, to question whether you're going to make it into the next day, let alone the next second. And so I'm sending them my prayers and my strength. I'm sending everybody working in the hospital my prayers and strength so that they can do everything possible to help these people survive.
Whitney, how did you deal with it spiritually, moving forward each day? And also the second part of that question, what types of pain did you suffer? Like, what is it like to be shot, I guess is what I'm asking.
To be shot for me felt a lot like, it was a burning sensation. It was confusing at first, but I assessed the situation and knew that nobody was close enough to me to have hurt me in any other way, that it must have been bullets. And for me, my brain was immediately focused on survival. And so I didn't really feel the pain in those moments. Just, again, focused on survival and how I could get back to my family. But in the midst of that moment and then in the hospital, and even to this day, my faith is an important part of my life. And absolutely, I pray for what role I can play in making a difference on this issue. I pray for those that are impacted every day. Outside of mass shooting incidents, we have people that are shot every single day in this city and in this country, and so that's the role that it plays for me, is a reminder of the gratitude I have for the outcome I received, but also for the strength to keep moving forward and to try to make a difference. And I know that many other people feel the same way, whether they're driven by their faith or driven by something else entirely. But trying to find strength in these moments to keep going and to bring people together for change.
Whitney, how do we help the victims in our community that are dealing with this immense loss? What do we do?
In order to move forward from this, it's going to take a lot of therapy, physical therapy, I did occupational therapy. I did psychiatric therapy. We all need to bend over backwards to make sure that these victims have access to the services they need to try to get back to a life similar to what they had before. Not everybody can overcome it in the way that I have, and so as a community, we really need to wrap our arms around them. The other thing that I will offer up to anybody that has been impacted, I am mostly okay because I wake up each morning and I look myself in the mirror and I know that I'm going to do everything I can today professionally to make a difference on this issue. And so I would encourage anybody that's feeling very desperate in this moment without hope, that there is hope. And you can find it with my organization, Whitney Strong. And we need you to get involved because it will only be when we come together with a unified voice, a loud, well-organized, unified voice, that we will see the
Whitney, what year did this happen in again? Which calendar year?
It was 2018.
Okay, 2018. Had you already, like I would argue, most Americans started changing the way they go about their lives because of the mass shootings over the last couple of decades, maybe 10 years ago. Had you already in your life started changing the way you go about things, watching out for the unimaginable that we now can imagine because it happens every couple of days?
Yes, absolutely. I had already changed my life before I was a victim of mass violence. In fact, I can remember as I was being shot thinking, how dare I believe I'm immune to this? Why did I think that this statistically insignificant thing wouldn't happen to me? Because now it is actually happening to me. But yes, we had, as a family, changed our behavior prior to me being shot, and certainly do now.
Wow.
And I think it's important to have those conversations about how we can be safe in this society that we have found ourselves in. But more energy should not be put into how do I maintain safety in my community than the energy that should be put towards solutions. We have solutions that we know will work. We simply need to build, or actually to continue to build upon the bipartisan teams of support that we have.
We just want to give an update from U of L Health. They are telling us that at least 3 patients have already been discharged. We're expected to hear from U of L Health Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jason Smith in a press conference today at 3 o'clock, along with Louisville Metro Emergency Services. So that'll happen at 3 o'clock today. But those shooting victims were taken to U of L Hospital, a level 1 trauma center. That is the place to be if you are suffering from a gunshot wound in our city. They deal with this sort of thing on a regular basis, and all hands on deck when something like this happens. Whitney, you talked about how you were aware of these sort of things before this tragedy happened to you in 2018, but then you go through it. Then how do you proceed forward? How do you change your perspective? How do you stay aware?
I think it's different for everybody as to your level of comfort. Personally, I prefer not to be in highly populated areas. But I know that it is not just me. Certainly as someone who is a victim of mass violence, anybody who is concerned about mass violence entering into their own lives reaches out to me and asks for my advice. And I can tell you that there are many, many, many people in our city and across the country that are concerned about being in highly populated areas. But, again, putting more energy into this conversation is somewhat futile. What happened this morning wasn't necessarily a highly populated area. It was just people going to work in the same way that I was just going to work on September 6th. I think we should all put all of our energy and our conversation into what solutions can prevent this moving forward, because that is the society that we want to live in. We do not want to live in a society where we are all second guessing if we should hang out in highly populated areas, if we shouldn't do that thing with our children. Mass violence. I know that we cannot live in a perfect world. We cannot reduce all harm. But what we are experiencing in this last decade is unlike any other decade in the history of the United States. We don't have to live like this. So again, I'm going to keep pointing us back toward, let's talk about solutions. And one of those solutions should not be that we all hang out in our houses and never go anywhere for fear of mass violence.
Okay, Whitney Austin, thank you so much for talking with us this morning, sharing your story of tragedy and survival, and thank you for your time today. President Biden just tweeted about today's shooting. It says, once again, our nation mourns after a senseless act of gun violence. Jill and I pray for the lives lost and impacted by today's shooting. Too many Americans are paying for the price of inaction with their lives. When will Republicans in Congress act to protect our communities?
Yeah, a lot of tweets you're reading today, just like that, the thoughts and prayers tweets. Something Whitney just said I thought was amazing, that as she was getting shot, as the first bullets entered her body, it just clicked. Now it's my turn, essentially. This very thing that we've been watching unfold on the news every 5 days, now it's my turn. To be honest, those of us in the news business, the last few mass shootings, every once in a while someone will say, we better be ready. Here's a news organization, because it's going to happen in Louisville again. Happened in 1989. Happened again.
And as Deshaun has said to us so many times, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And, you know, I feel like we go through this routine of shock. Oh, my gosh, it happened again. And then we move on because in a couple of days, unfortunately, there'll be another one and another one and another one. And it's just the cycle that we're in and cannot seem to get out of.
How does this affect the mindset of a police officer?
Well, you still have to do your job first and foremost, but you're carrying that with you. You have some fellow police officers who've been injured while doing their job, injured in the line of duty. So you're carrying that with you. You're carrying the concerns about your friends or your coworkers, and but you still have to push forward through that. You have to remain professional and handle your job, collect the evidence, handle the traffic. Whether your job is on the back end of it, you still have a job to do from a professional standpoint. But they're carrying that with them right now. They are emotionally shook right now. As we talked to Whitney, I could tell the emotions that came flooding back. I could hear it in her voice.
Yeah.
And those officers are dealing with that right now.
So what are the rank and file police officers doing for each other at a time like this after this morning's shooting in Louisville?
And that's the part that we have to look into. Is there a support mechanism for them that they can connect to? Years ago when I went through my shooting, there was no support mechanism, but I believe there are support mechanisms in place now to help those dealing with incidents like this.
Okay, you are watching, Deshaun, hang on here. We've passed the top of the hour, so I guess we should recap the very latest information that we have learned. In this mass shooting this morning that happened shortly after 8:30, we have still at this hour 4 dead, plus the shooter would be 5, 8 injured. 2 of those are police officers. 1 in critical was in surgery. Have not gotten an update on how that went with the surgery. One of the big parts of this story, as we've started to learn the details, were the heroic actions by Louisville police. Got there in 3 minutes. Obviously risking their lives and getting in. And we don't know if they took down the shooter or if it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound by a shooter who knew the jig was up and it was about to come to an end. The governor hustled over here, told us a close friend of his did not make it. He's having trouble wrapping his arms around it. The governor pointed out that his campaign for attorney general, which was one of the building blocks on his way to becoming governor, was out of that very same building. He still calls Louisville a safe community. And he said we saw the best from the police today.
Yes, and you know, when you think about 3 minutes responding, that is very quickly. When officers entered the bank, there was still gunshots going off, and we don't know officially much about the shooter. We do know that he was a previous employee. Police have not officially released his name or a possible motive, but Deshaun, in seeing cases like this, where you have a previous employee who goes back into their workplace, obviously there is some sort of, this person is disgruntled, this person is upset, this person is going after people.
And knows the lay of the land,
knows
too.
the lay of the land, knows where certain people sit, stand. They know Monday morning there's a meeting, so everybody gets together, and they know what time that's happening. So this sort of thing can be very mapped out and calculated.
Yes, it can. And as you know, it's a previous shooting, the young lady had diagrams of the school. And there are people who return to work. They know where certain people are going to be at a certain times because they were part of the mechanism for a while. But understanding this, that sometimes it's hard to calculate that. Sometimes it's hard. They may put on a brave face going out, but internally, they're having so many issues internally that they're coming back and saying, okay, you're not expecting this. It can come out of the blue because once a person does their 9 to 5, we don't really follow them home.
No.
So we never know what's going on outside of the workplace sometimes with people.
In your research and all of this, because you've actually studied this sort of thing, what do you see for the shooter? Do they usually post about it? Do they talk about it? Do they research about it? Go online and search things? What do they do?
Yes, yes, and yes. A lot of times they will post, and they post it in certain ways to where it's suggestive. They will do searches of mass shootings and how they came out. They will do searches of different type of weapons. They will do back searches of the people who they're targeting. They will go onto that person's social media account. They may friend that person. They may look at their Instagram page to see what type of person they are. So they will do a lot of different research about these things before they do them, about the people who they may be or may not be targeting, or the event, type of weapon use, those things that the research is done because it's there.
And as far as weapons go, what do you have seen historically as far as guns purchased legally, illegally? What are you saying?
Most of them are purchased legally because at this point they're not considered a threat at this point, and a lot of times they purchase them over time. They'll purchase one, then they'll go purchase another, and sometimes the purchases will scale up. They may purchase a handgun, then they may purchase a rifle, then they may purchase an AR-15, and then their purchases switch to ammunition. And what they may do, they may go to different locations and not buy a lot. They may buy a couple of boxes from this store, a couple of boxes from that store, and build on that so when they're ready, they have enough ammunition and enough weapons.
If you are just picking up our coverage here, we're talking with Deshaun Johnson, our safety and security expert. We go to him for a lot of different news stories and a lot of different case scenarios and all that. And I guess I need to ask you specifically, if you're in something like a morning meeting, I'm going to again say we've had no confirmation on who the shooter is or whether it was in fact a disgruntled employee coming back to a meeting and opening fire. But if it was, or if you're in a situation like that, in a specific thing like a morning meeting, and someone comes in armed and starts opening fire, specifically what exactly should you do?
First thing you do is try to get as much distance between yourself and the assailant.
Distance.
Distance. As much distance as possible between yourself and the assailant. The second thing you would try to do is get as much barriers in place between you and the assailant.
All right, this is a picture. We just got word that Mayor Craig Greenberg is leaving U of L Hospital. I'm assuming that he was meeting with the officers, the families, the victims who were shot, meeting with doctors there. We know that U of L Health is going to give us an update at 3 p.m. today on the status of the 8 people that went to U of L Hospital.
Okay, live picture there. We had to bring you up to date on that. Now, continue your thought. I interviewed several people in the Standard Gravure massacre who thought a table might help them, but it didn't. The gunman shot right through the table at them as they were hiding and trying to get a table put between them and the gun.
Yes, you want to get as much cover between you and the gunman as possible. You want to get items that bullets won't penetrate, as walls or really thick desks, things that they can't penetrate through. So those are the things that you want to do. You want to access those as quickly as possible. And you also don't try to investigate. A lot of people sometimes, they will hear something and the first thing they would want to do is go investigate.
Or whip out their phone and start recording. How is it, that's the society we're in, right?
Which puts them in a greater threat instead of getting out, getting away, creating that distance. If you create that distance, because the shooter knows they have a limited time. And if you create time, as much distance you're creating time between you and them with something that they know they don't have a lot of.
Okay, you said that you've been shot before?
Yes.
Tell the viewers who are just joining us exactly what happened to you and how that turned out.
There was a shooting while I was working in law enforcement, and at that point the shooter had shot a couple of individuals, and I just happened to roll up on it, and they're engaged, him and I, in a gunfight, and I initially was shot, and the perpetrator was shot also. I shot the perpetrator.
How long of a road to recovery?
It was quite a road to recover, and the road recovery still continues to this day.
To this day? How long ago was it?
To this day, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
And to this day, it still continues. Because
physically, mentally, both?
Both, because your injuries heal, but they're still there. Mentally, you still have the dreams, you still have thought process you go through, and things like this happen today. That brings back that flood of emotion. It instantly took me back to my engagement at that point in time.
Okay, so we don't know very much about the circumstances of this shooting. We don't know a lot about the shooter. Actually, we don't know a lot about some of the very key components here, because you know how this will all play out. In all these mass shootings, we learn as much as we can about the shooter, then we find out about the weapon or weapons, and then you find out if they are legally purchased or not, the scenarios in which those were purchased. We usually hear sooner rather than later more information about the victims.
Okay, we're going to go to John. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, I was listening to our
Reynolds,
producer, yeah.
Sadiqa, thanks for joining us. You heard those gunshots going off.
I did. I heard the gunshots this morning, and it is, I don't know, I think you talk yourself out of believing it's gunshots. I actually thought, oh, maybe it was construction. Maybe somebody dropped something, because it's hard to believe it's gunshots in Louisville, or you just never believe you're in the place where something like that is happening or near.
Sadiqa, so where exactly were you and how close from the bank?
I was close enough to be able to hear gunshots this morning. I live in the downtown area. I live downtown. Don't want to say exactly where I live, but close enough to be really, really frightened. Very thankful that my kids were at school today.
Sadiqa, what did you do when you heard those gunshots?
I got a text from a neighbor that said, don't come out, don't try to go anywhere. There's an active shooter in the area. So I locked made sure my front door was locked. I locked my bedroom door, and then I locked myself in the bathroom.
Sadiqa, I'm curious about your thoughts on where we are as a community. I already shared earlier, I was struck as the mayor took the podium today to start with the press conference that we're looking at a mayor who barely survived, got really lucky to survive an attempt on his life in an office shooting. And it just struck me as so profoundly remarkable, the gun violence in our community.
I think what is profoundly remarkable is the gun violence in our country. I don't think this is a Louisville problem. This is really an American problem. And our elected officials really are going to have to act. The people have got to stand up across lines of race, across lines of religious division, whatever is the thing that divides us. We have to decide to come together on this. We cannot afford to lose anyone else, not in Louisville and not in this country. It is terrifying. I cannot explain to you what it feels like just be alone in a room by yourself in your home, afraid to come out, afraid to move. I cannot imagine what those family members feel like today who have lost people. I understand that there are at least 5 people that are dead in this shooting. My understanding is there have been 3 shootings in Louisville today. Maybe that's not right, at least 2 for sure. We have other people dead in other parts of our city. Gun violence is an epidemic. It is a problem across this country, and we need politicians who are willing to fight for us. They have got to be willing to change these laws. Every person should not be able to get access to a weapon. We need smart gun reform, and we need it now.
Sadiqa, you mentioned that you were grateful that your children were in school when this happened, but they're going to come home tonight, and you said you live close by. How do you have that conversation with them?
Well, my kids are not going to get to come home tonight, first of all, so that's not happening. And, I had to text them just to say, because I have a daughter who is old enough to drive, and so I wanted to make sure that for whatever reason, if she, last week they had senior skip day, so I wanted to make sure she was in school and not coming anywhere near the house. I don't know what to say to them. This is the world we live in, and school isn't even safe, right? That's part of the issue. Schools aren't safe. There is no safe place. There's no safe place for us. And so we have to do something to make this world safer. And I really do believe that this is the time for us to come together, again, across lines of politics. It doesn't matter about the political party, Republicans, Democrats, independents, black, white, I don't care. People have got to figure out a way to pass smart gun law reform. We have to. We cannot live like this. Mentally, it's exhausted. Physically, the stress on your body. I was listening to Deshaun before I came on, and just thinking about the fact that he's actually been shot, and I can't even imagine what he goes through, the trauma of it, sort of reliving it, all of that. Same for Whitney. I heard her on earlier. But I'm telling you, the physical part for someone who is afraid, when you don't know, there's no way for anybody, the whole building, everybody's in here afraid. I mean, we have no idea what is happening. Can you go outside? The footsteps that you hear in the hallway, is someone out there? This was terrifying. It was terrifying. And it shouldn't have to come to your door for us to do something. We have to do better. Our country deserves better. Our children deserve better. These families who have lost loved ones today, they deserve better. I don't know about why we can't get along and what we can't do. I don't want another politician to pray for our community. I want people who have the power to change this to actually do something.
Yeah, you're right. There are no safe places. You put that word. But on the other hand, like Whitney was saying, you can't just hide in your house for the rest of your life. So, like, where do you draw the line there? How do you balance the two, Sadiqa?
I think we have to call on our elected officials to act. I mean, really, that's what they have to act in a way that protects us. They have to act in a way that will help to change the laws that allow people who shouldn't have weapons to have them, that allow everybody, the types of weapons that people have. It's unacceptable. I don't care what your mental health state is. I don't care how much hunting you do. You don't need all these automatic rifles. We have got to change that. It can't be legal in our country to hold these kinds of weapons. And I don't know anything about what kind of weapon this person had at Old National Bank today. But what I do know is there are too many mass shootings happening in this country. There are too many mass shootings happening. Too many children are dead. Too many innocent people are lost. We have got to do something. We shouldn't be acting like we're paralyzed and this is just the way it has to be. It doesn't have to be this way. We can change it. We have the power to change it. But people have to be willing to come together. This is a great time for us in Louisville to say not in Louisville, Kentucky. And let me say this. I think it is interesting that this comes at a time where we have elected officials in Tennessee who have been expelled from their roles because they were raising their voices against gun violence. What kind of country shuts people down when they are saying, I don't want another person to die? That's unacceptable. And we need regular people regular folks to lift their voices, to write letters, to call their legislators to say, we don't want this. Not in America, not in Tennessee, not in Kentucky, not in Louisville, not on my block. We don't need this. We have got to act. We have got to act. And I want to say this too. These elected officials who are posing with their families, with guns for the holidays, send ammunition for Christmas. It's not fair to the people who have been shot. It's not fair to the Whitneys of the world, right? To Whitney Austin. It's not fair to these families who've lost someone today. This is serious. This is serious. Like, we have got to act like we are responsible adults. And we've got to do something to change the laws in this country, to change access.
This situation today is going to make national headlines today. Will be, the focus of newscasts across the country. Then the next one happens, but we're still here. We're still dealing with that loss. We're still dealing with that grief. And it hurts for a long time. John, you've been talking about standard Gravere several times today. People may not be talking about that today, but we are, because we went through it. It hurts us. It's just so painful.
Sadiqa, when I get engaged in this discussion about some of the very things you just talked about and the kind of change many want to see, one of the things that pops up is the thought, the fear, is it too late? Is it too late? Are there already too many guns out there? I am personally blown away by following LMPD on Twitter, and every time they make a bust, the cache of illegal weapons off the street, multiple times per week, 20, 30, 40, 50 guns out there. When we do stories on their year-end stats of the illegal guns out there in the street, it's mind-blowing. I think it came out to like an average of like 7 per day or some amazing, might be a little off on that, but some amazing stat. So I ask you, do you fear that it's possibly even too late?
No, I don't think it's too late. And I want to say something about LMPD being able to confiscate the weapons. In Kentucky, when LMPD finds those weapons, those illegal weapons, they are not even allowed to destroy them. So imagine if LMPD was finding 7, let's say your number's accurate, 7 a day. That's 7 that could be destroyed every single day. But instead, what we're doing, those guns are being put right back into circulation in our state, and they end up in Illinois, they end up in Indiana, they end up in other places, and we end up with their guns. So imagine if our police departments had the ability to confiscate and destroy weapons that they find. That could change things. I just don't think it's too late. I think we have got to stop being made to feel like and accepting this idea that it is what it is and there's nothing we can do. I think there are some politicians who want to make us believe that. They want to make us believe that the better thing is to just give every person a weapon, let everybody have a weapon, and then we all just shoot it out. That's not the way to handle this. We need these weapons off the street. That's just the bottom line, and it can be done. The fact that the police are finding so many weapons on a daily basis says to us, right, that they can be empowered to help us stop violence. But the challenge is that the lawmakers and the laws don't allow police to fully do that. And so this is what I say. This is where you actually do need a strong police department. And let me take a moment, because I have been critical of police when I felt like they were wrong. But I want to tell you that today they showed up quickly. They put their lives in jeopardy. They did what they had to do. And I think it is important to acknowledge that. Thank God for a strong police department on days like today. This is why we want police. This is what people are talking about. And we don't want them distracted by foolishness. We want other people to worry about those things. But today, our police department, I'm sure that they saved so many people's lives. I am sure of it.
They did, for sure. Thank you. Sadiqa, I just want to interrupt really quickly because right now, taking a look at one of our cameras, LMPD is towing a car from the Old National Bank parking lot right now. You can see it right there. It's hooked up to that tow there. We don't know specifically whose car this is, but that car is being towed by LMPD.
So many questions still here as we approach 1:30, almost 5-6 hours after the shooting. Still don't know anything about the shooter. Our producer's asking, no, one more question for Sadiqa. We don't know anything about the weapon. We know a little bit about the victims, just insofar as the governor said it is one of his very good friends who did not make it. We don't know who the 2 police officers are. We don't know how the one officer who was critical in surgery is. And we don't know anything about the circumstances. So there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered. Sadiqa, what is the most important question you want answered in relation to this particular shooting?
I think the question that I want answered, and it is a question to Republicans, it is a question to Democrats, it is a question to every person serving in the legislative body in Frankfurt. My question is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to change this? What are you going to do to keep our community safe? That is my question today.
Sadiqa, thank you so much for your time today, and we are glad that you are safe, and we appreciate your time and talking with us.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
It's just, wrapping your brain around this. And as you said, John, there's so much that we don't know, so many questions that we are waiting to ask. The next press conference is going to be in about 3 o'clock today from LMPD, along with U of L Health, from Dr. Jason Smith, all those patients that were taken there to find out how they're doing. We did report that I think 3, is that correct? 3 patients have been discharged. If I remember correctly, 3 have been discharged. Yes.
3 have been discharged. All right, as we start to do interviews and look like a cable news outfit here in the coverage of all of these mass shootings over the years, as you take a live look there at University of Louisville Hospital, and we get guests on who start making comments either on the left or the right about gun control. I want to tell you guys, share with you guys a really interesting story that arose from the last mass shooting we had in Louisville, the Standard Gravier massacre. 2 of the people who were shot and almost died, Jackie Miller and Mike Campbell, both shot 4 times each. Okay, both came very, very close to dying. Both came out of that experience, that near-death experience of a workplace mass shooting, on completely opposite sides of the fence when it comes to gun control. Mike Campbell went on a speaking tour and went on all the shows in the country that would allow him on, and personally then pushed for gun control legislation. Jackie's position was very simple. She had NRA stickers on her wheelchair, okay? And her position was simple. She said, John, I was the 2nd person shot out of a string of 30 people. 8 dead, 12 wounded. We now know I was the 2nd person shot. She said, I was reaching for the gun in my purse when he shot me. When I looked up and saw the look in his eye, and he shot me. She said, if I had gotten to my gun and taken him out, I save, 18 people from going through the experience. So it was, and I wrote about it in my book. It's fascinating, though, from a journalist perspective, to see 2 people come out of this, the same number of bullet holes in them, and have a completely opposite take on gun control. You see it in your life, too, that the arguments go on and on and on.
And a lot of people will take both sides, and a lot of people think the best way to stop an armed assailant is to be armed. And a lot of people think the best way to get rid of an armed assailant is to get rid of weapons. So we have both sides. So
yeah.
But something has to, I agree with Sadiq, something has to be done. We cannot continue to live like this and cannot continue to every other week reporting mass shootings and where people are getting killed and lives are being destroyed.
The governor just tweeted just a few minutes ago saying today is a tragedy. Louisville and the entire Commonwealth are mourning, and we call on everyone to share the love and support and compassion this community desperately needs right now. A senseless act took the lives of our fellow Kentuckians, including friends of mine. What these families are experiencing is unimaginable. They need us to wrap our arms around them and to love them with our hearts. Thank you to the heroic members of the LMPD and all of our first responders who undoubtedly saved lives while putting their own at risk. We are forever grateful. And that's coming from the governor just a few minutes ago.
All right, Deshaun has a lot of experience in big crime cases, and maybe you could give us a little insight into what are some of the next questions that we believe usually the way these things go will be answered. The next biggest questions to be answered.
The next question is going to be, first of all, is what type of weapon was used in this incident? How was that weapon purchased? When was that weapon purchased? As I told you before, they're going to start working backwards. As we talked about the possible vehicle, working backwards, because right now the investigative team are looking at this, that we have victims, we have people wounded, we have people deceased, so they want to get it right. So there's no quick timeline on it. So we're not getting information as quickly as we would like it, but they want to do their process. They want to get it right. So they're going to take time with their process to make sure when they do give us the information is correct. But the biggest thing they want to find out is what weapon, what was used, why this person did this, what was going on, what was their thought process, how did they get into the building, what did they need to get in, was there security measures in place to get into the building, or was the doors open at that point in time? So there are certain things that they are going to investigate, but the biggest question is now is, what was this person's thought process? What put this person in this position where they felt they had to come back to a place of work and hurt and harm people there?
Statistically, what have we seen in previous years as far as the age, that sort of thing, as far as somebody who would go in and do this sort of shooting?
Well, right now, that profile that we used to have is expanding. And it's, it's expanding as quickly as the data is coming in. It's being calculated and it's expanding. We used to have a small window to profile an active shooter, that they were a white male between this age and this age, but now it's expanding so much because every other week we are having one, and all that data is coming in fluently as we're talking about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was in the last big one, there was a manifesto. And oftentimes when there is a mass shooting, the public dives in so fast and so furiously before any sites can be taken down that you can usually learn a lot about the motive and what was going on with this person. There has been a social media dive going on today that has been rather remarkable.
Yeah, and we have reporters just going through Twitter who are at the residence of the neighborhood where the shooter reportedly lived, talking to neighbors as well. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that. And how much of this do law enforcement, they talk to family members, parents, if the person was living with their family, do they dive into that?
Yes, they do dive into that because that's part of the investigation. Because in order to the investigation, they will ask you questions. Has something been off the last couple of weeks? Has there been a problem? Was this person taking this type of medication? Were they seeing a doctor for a certain type of anxieties? Anything that can help them understand the why. And that's what it is, understanding the why. Why this person committed this heinous act today. Understanding, was it the medication? Was it the doctor? Were they
even getting help?
Taking were they a fallout at home, or anything that can assist in this investigation? Because what some people may think is very minor could be a major turning issue in an investigation.
So since you were present in 1989 and went in the building in the Standard Gravure massacre and with the police force, can you maybe give us some details on how the department then divides up this investigation? Like, how big of a manpower do they put on this?
Well, as you know, those times have changed because at that point, that was a mess. we as officers did not know what we were up against. We came in with revolvers and shotguns, and we were just totally outgunned after we realized what we were up against. We were trying to transport people to the hospital in our cars.
Right. There were not enough ambulances.
Yeah, at that point. So right now, these officers learn from other mass shootings, like I said, the takeaways that they get, how to effectively conduct a grid search investigation. Certain teams that will handle the investigation of the home, certain teams that will handle the investigation of the car. There are certain teams that will handle the investigation of the scene. So there are teams broken up, and they know what their responsibilities are. And assisting and getting help from other agencies, because there was a time there was not a lot of cooperation amongst agencies, state, federal, and local. But now those barriers are torn down, and there's a lot of cooperation between those agencies, with ATF, with FBI, with
KSP,
Homeland Security.
Yeah.
What are agencies? They're offering their assistance. So now that assistance is being accepted. So there's a lot of things in play right now, but unfortunately, we should not be at this point to where we have these things in play, but we do.
The ATF just tweeted about the mass shooting in downtown Louisville. The tweet says, "Our hearts are heavy for Louisville. We are praying for families who lost loved ones and for those fighting for their lives today because of another senseless act of violence. The dangers faced by our police officers are real, and they are constant. LMPD should be commended for such a courageous response and for running into harm's way to protect this city." Deshaun, I want you to, probably some of these officers who are out there right now investigating, they responded in a way that, they're not thinking of themselves. They're thinking about how they can protect everybody else.
No, and that's when you first come on the scene and it's an active scene, your immediate response is stop that threat. That's your mindset as an officer, to stop that threat. And sometimes you have to put yourself between the threat and civilians. That's what you do. That's what makes police being heroic. But that's what they do. And being part of this job, there's a possibility it can happen. You never think it's going to happen, but it's a possibility to happen. So in seeing this, I am not surprised these officers did this, because we all know in the back of our mind that when we put the badge on, there's some good side and there's some bad side to it. But at the end of the day, I would not be surprised at the courage of the LMPD forces.
When you went into Standard Gravure in that mass shooting, how were you armed? And
I had a revolver.
That was it?
I had a 6-shot revolver.
Okay, and how a lot of time actually transpired in the Standard Gravure massacre before they knew that Joe Westbecker was in fact dead.
Right, because it was a big building. There was a lot of
cavernous, big press facility. A lot of the people couldn't even hear the gunshots. A lot of the people didn't know that the gunman was coming up on them to shoot them until the last second, because it was such a loud building.
Radio transmission was a mess because everybody was on different floors. Nobody knew who was. We didn't have a mobile command center then, none of that stuff. So at the point now, those are the things I say, the takeaways that they take away. So, okay, yeah, maybe a mobile command center works better in situations like this. How do we do this? Do we break it up into teams? So those are the takeaways that they look at down the road and say, okay, these are things that we're going to add to our policies and how we deal with these, because they know, just like today, another one's coming.
So how long were you in there before the threat was officially over?
I don't remember how long it was. I don't remember getting the idea that the threat was over, because I didn't realize till we came out to help somebody. I pulled back out to help someone to realize that Westbecker was dead.
Okay.
So it was a lot of information going on, because one thing about officers, we were not communicating well that day. But now the communication is a lot better. You have better channels. You have better communication skill set, and they teach this a lot better.
Speed seems to me to be of the essence here in reacting to these things nowadays. And clearly, with the report that LMPD reacted within 3 minutes, speed was a factor. But talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely, because when you get there, the quicker you get there, the quicker you can stop the threat. Because the longer it takes you to get there, the more time that the assailant has to interact and hurt and harm people. So you want the threat to stop immediately. So you want to get there, and that depends on what's coming across the radio. And as I was coming here, it was amazing, because The threat was at 8th Street at that point. They had a shooting there. I seen people in traffic that would not get over for the police cars coming.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I don't understand. When people see police cars, they will, and that is time, crucial time.
Seconds matter.
Well, well, think about the seconds. So right now, we have 4 dead, not counting the shooter, and 8 wounded. That's 12 people shot. These gunmen with these high-powered rifles / AKs, you can shoot a lot more than 12 people in 3 minutes,
Yes,
the
you
way
can.
these guns are equipped.
Yes, you can. You can do a lot of damage in 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a very long time.
That's a long time.
Yes, it is.
Again, we, with it being a bank, we were talking about this, John and Deshaun, like you would think that there's security cameras inside the bank, outside the bank. The police will probably be looking at surveillance video. We do not know if there was any type of security guard within the bank working at that time. We're still waiting to find that out. But the shooter, we don't even know yet if he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound or if he was shot by police in that exchange of gunfire. So that's information that we're still waiting to hear from. We still don't officially know his name. So, but we do have reporters out in a neighborhood where we believe that the suspect lived and talking to neighbors as well. So we're just waiting for some official confirmation on that.
Okay, now put your security expert hat back on, Deshaun. If, and I underscore if, because we don't know this to be a fact. I've had a source tell me this is the case, but we don't know this is a fact. But if, because this is an important question because it does happen a lot, if this is a person who was let go last week, what are the typical security protocols when something like that happens? You take their key card, usually, right?
Correct. Everything that belongs to the company is usually taken away, depending on what level that they hold, or what position that they hold in the company.
Right.
It's usually taken away, whether it's their key card, access code, change, computer passwords, all those things that belong to the company are taken away.
But that wouldn't keep somebody from getting back in the building if they just waited till the door opens.
That is correct, depending on the access point. But it's also an employee threat assessment. What you want to look at also, and we say threat assessment or you say risk assessment, employee risk or threat assessment. As far as termination, what type of risk or what type of threat is that employee to you from that standpoint? You want to look at that also when terminating somebody. What levels do they have? Have they shown those tendencies? Why are they being terminated? Is key, because are they being terminated for a criminal act or are they being terminated for violating a policy and procedure? So that can have a lot to do with it also. So those things, when you want to look at the employee risk assessment upon termination, those are the factors that you want to look at.
We have on the phone right now Willie Ball. He was one of the first officers to report at the scene of the Standard Gravere shooting. Willie, thank you for talking with us today. Your reaction to today's shooting?
Do we have Willie on the phone? Again, Willie Ball, first to react to,
Okay. All right. We'll try to connect with him later if we can. But Deshaun, just you were talking about we've been talking about so many aspects of this today, and it's
the security angle, though. Yeah. The security angle. So when you do, I imagine the bulk of your time is doing security training sessions.
Yes, because it's fluid.
Acts like these.
Because whenever you have a situation that happens like today, you have an uptick in a lot of organizations, companies asking you to do security briefings for their company, risk assessments for their company. But it's like anything else, after it goes away, it levels off. So unfortunately, a lot of companies that do it, there is a cost assessed with it.
Okay, I noticed you did ours here. What was that, a couple months ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was blown away by the magnitude and the detail at the things you guys look at when you come in and look at a company. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, what you want to do when you do a risk assessment of a company, you want to look at where they're most vulnerable, what type of situation they do, and what they do. Is it a public company? How limited or unlimited is their contact with the general public? There's a lot of different factors, whether it's a building, whether they have employees outside, how they're connected, what type of background checks do they do on their check their employees to make sure, vet their employees to make sure that they're okay. Is it done once or twice a year? So a lot of things that we look at, and we can go as deep as the company wants us to. Some of the things are just surface things. Some things they want us to come in and check exits to make sure they have an access point, to create somewhere a safe environment. Sometimes it's done at a very deep extent, but sometimes it's done to a level to just make the company understand that they want to give their employees an opportunity just in case something happens.
All right, Deshaun, we're going to go to Willie Ball. We were trying to talk to him earlier, but we got him back on the phone. He was one of the first officers to respond to the Standard Gravier shooting. Willie, thank you for talking with us. If you want to maybe mute your TV there behind you so we can prevent the feedback. Yeah, thank you. But Willie, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. Just your reaction to today's incident.
Well, I mean, it's troubling, but actually the reason I called in is because the one guest that you had, Ms. Paquita Reynolds, and she kept talking about the gun control and the legislature and everything. And my argument and my aggravation is that there are plenty of laws on the books right now for guns. But if you're not going to enforce them, and one of the things I think that the city needs to look at, how many convicted felons are arrested again with a gun possession? And how many times do they just keep going through the system? And that's when all your gun control laws, if you enforce them and actually have somebody go to jail for possessing a gun, then it might curtail some of this. But to simply say that we need legislatures to make more laws and do all these kind of things, I just don't buy into that.
So, Willie, it's been, what, 34 years now? I interviewed you on the 30-year anniversary of Standard Gravier.
Yes, sir.
So I'm interested in the perspective of somebody with law enforcement background, just like Deshaun here, who was actually involved in the one 34 years ago. And you see it still coming out. And I'll preface my question by telling you something that I noticed. As I was going through the tapes for my special report here 4 years ago, the sound bites that we were running in the story in 1989 are the exact same sound bites you will hear tonight on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. The same exact sound bites from people in favor of gun control and the same sound bites for people who oppose it. So there, I just threw that in because I thought that was kind of an interesting footnote that I had never talked with you about after I interviewed you.
34 years later, nothing's changed.
Yeah, so your thoughts?
Well, again, like I said, I believe there's enough laws on the book for gun control if they're enforced. And I think Louisville's big part of their crime problem and shootings evolves around the fact that you've got young men who have been convicted of a felony who are then rearrested, and they are in possession of a handgun. And they're not being, on very few occasions will they take them to a federal court and charge them with the federal crime of possession of a gun as a convicted felon. But on the state level, they're just not doing it. And you keep having these repeaters out here that are continuously involved in shootings. And I think that the court systems have to really start hammering down and putting some enforcement into the courts that there's not going to be tolerated.
Willie, if you could just, being in law enforcement, being one of the first officers to respond to Standard Gravier, we've been talking to Deshaun about this all morning, but what are these officers going through? You've been through it.
Well, it was a different time. I think now that we've had so many of these shootings that officers are kind of prepared in a small sort of way that, this could happen. When that happened in '89, I think it was only maybe the second one that occurred in the United States at that time.
Yes.
So it was really a nuance to, us handling that. And as far as the after effect, and I heard Deshaun mention this earlier, that after his shooting, there was no counseling. There was nobody that we, went to discuss the incident or everything like that. So today they are better equipped for the officers to get some type of counseling, which, is good. I don't know. In my case, it dwelled on me for maybe a day, maybe a 2 day, but then it was kind of like it was over and done with, and the only time that you pretty much ever recall it is when an incident like this happens or it's the anniversary date.
Talk a little bit, Willie, about what's going through your mind as an officer in the initial moments of responding to an event like that, like you did 34 years ago.
Well, I think you just go into automatic mode. In my case, I went in with 3 commanding officers, so they were making the calls, making the decision. I was just the ground troop. But I don't think you have time to really think anything. You just kind of react and go through the motions and do what needs to be done. There was I haven't shared this to many people, but when we went in that day, we went in up the stairwell, and the plan was that I was going to go in low, and I was going to be covered by this major with a shotgun, and he was going to cover me. Well, we kick the door in, and I go in low, and he's covering me, and we go through the whole motion for the rest of the day. Well, at the end of it, when we're doing the critique, turns out that the major, in his haste to get his weapon out of the trunk, his shotgun, he failed to load it with any shells.
Wow, yeah.
So, in essence, I was counting on him for protection, and he was unloaded. But he told that story on himself, and I think it was for a learning lesson that, when these things happen, you try to rush as best you can, but there's going to be some mistakes made. And, some are deadly and some others don't turn out to be anything. While we have you on there, I just wanted to say something to Sean that let your viewers know that he was a lot better policeman than he is a golfer.
Okay. Willie, thank you very much for joining us. And, he brings up some good points there about going in, and the whole time he thought he was covered, he was really not covered. And he said the word haste. In the haste of a moment like that really had only been seen one other time in our country, you can forgive that.
Yeah, but as he said, the same mindset, stop the threat. Even though he was in haste, his mindset was in stop the threat mode.
Yes.
But the officers are trained better now to assess their equipment before entering, understanding who's doing what. So, and Willie was one of the first ones on the scene. He was actually very heroic in what he did back then.
You're watching Local News Live. I'm Nicole Newman. What we've been covering early this morning, breaking just around 8:30, a deadly mass shooting in Louisville, Kentucky. This is live coverage from our station Wave 3 in Louisville. What we know right now, 4 people are dead, at least 9 are injured. That includes 2 police officers, 1 that is in critical condition. Earlier today, we did hear from the mayor, Craig Greenberg, who is saying, everyone pray with us for those at the hospital and to put an end to this type of violence. We also heard earlier from Governor Andy Beshear, where he talked about how quickly Louisville police officers responded to keep this from being any more catastrophic than it already is. We have much more coming up on this breaking news at our show at 2 o'clock. Stay with us. You are watching Local News Live.